We'll get started in just a minute. Thanks. We all set? Great. Welcome, everyone. I hope it's going to be a good evening for you all. I'd like to call to order the City of San Carlos's Planning and Transportation Commission special meeting of June 16th. And can we have a roll call, please? Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped to 4. That's fine. There are no Assembly Bill 2449 teleconference requests. And then we do the pledge before the roll call. Please join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the roll call, please.
Commissioner Anand? Yes. Commissioner Bundy?
Present.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Present.
Vice Chair Garvey?
Present.
And Chair Clements?
Present. We're on to item 5, public comment. Public comment's limited to items not on tonight's agenda. The commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act, which is Government Code Section 54954.2. However, the commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or to have a matter placed on a future commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. We have one speaker in person. If you'd like to approach Sarah McDowell, I believe is the way you pronounce that.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm Sarah McDowell. I'm the mayor of San Carlos, but I am here tonight in my personal capacity to express my sincere appreciation to Commissioners Garvey and Castaneda. Commissioner Castaneda, thank you for your thoughtfulness in weighing issues so carefully. You think about the impact of your decisions on individuals, businesses, and our community as a whole. You never took this work lightly, and you give your feedback, and your feedback and your insights have been so extremely valuable. Commissioner Garvey, you have served 2 terms on this commission. You were chair during the pandemic, holding meetings that were very difficult by Zoom. You have brought a wealth of experience to the commission. Your background dealing with complex environmental policies and impacts have truly benefited the commission and our city so much. I frequently watch recordings of your meetings in preparation for my meetings, and I can tell that both of you, and in fact all 5 of you, truly do the work. You visit sites before your meetings to see firsthand the issues that you have to tackle. You do the reading, which sometimes is hundreds and hundreds of pages long. You follow up with staff. You have treated the public coming here, sometimes with opposing viewpoints, with respect, and you have worked hard to ensure that everyone's voices would be heard. I also want to say thank you for being part of history this year with our first all-women planning commission. Nothing delights me more than seeing talented women like all of you serving our community and taking their place at the decision-making table. I appreciate both of you and all of you for stepping up and serving our community with the gift of your time and your care for our city. So thank you again for your service, and I hope both of you will continue to be involved and visit San Carlos when you are able. Thank you again.
Thank you. Are there any other comments that people would like to make in person here in the chambers? If not, we can go to people who are online on Zoom. Lynette, do we have any hands raised for item 5, public comment?
There are no hands raised.
Okay. If you'd like to make a public comment, there are forms in the back. If you'd like to make a public comment over Zoom, on the screen is the Zoom number. It's meeting 886-354-67-439. And you can virtually raise your hand by clicking on reactions and then the raise hand icon. If you're calling in 669-900-9128, you can press *9 to raise your hand. Lynette, do we have any callers on Zoom?
There are none.
Okay. Before we close the public comment period, I would like to make a comment to thank my 2 colleagues for all of their service to the Planning and Transportation Commission. I've enjoyed working with you so much. You're just delightful, well-informed, so intelligent, and I appreciate all your efforts. And really appreciate all 5 of us being together for at least a short amount of time. As the mayor had said, with the first all-female commission. So, and a special thank you to Commissioner Vice Chair Garvey, or Vice Mayor as I like to call her, for your orientation, for your reaching out, and for all of your willingness to talk about anything, all of the issues, and really make everybody feel comfortable on the commission. You've been wonderful. Thank you. With that, I would like to get a motion to close the public comment. I'd like to make the motion to close public comment. Do we need a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Bundy?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garvey?
Yes.
And Chair Clements.
Yes. Thank you. We're on to item 6, approval of minutes. Approval of the June 2nd, 2025 Planning and Transportation Commission meeting minutes. Did any commissioners have any desired edits or corrections they would like to make? No? Okay, then I need a motion to approve the minutes.
I will move the approval of the June 2nd, 2025 Planning and Transportation Commission meeting minutes.
Thank you. We have a
I'll
second?
second.
Great. Roll call.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Bundy?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garvey?
Yes.
And Chair Clements.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we are on to item 7. This is a public hearing for 201 Industrial Road. I'm going to read the title and then read the procedure. This is a request for conditional use permit amendment, minor plan development amendment, and design review for a new permanent emergency generator, an associated enclosure, and a temporary generator to serve an existing 4-story multi-tenant structure in conformance with Plan Development Number 18, Ordinance 1312, estimated in the year 2002, and APN number 046-020-370 and 046-020-380. In tonight's public hearings, as always, staff will present a report on the history and physical features on the application, then we'll follow with staff's recommendations. If applicable, the applicant may make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties have had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues that you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should fill out a speaker's form found by the door and hand it to the recording secretary prior to addressing the commission. The speaker should come up to the microphone to speak since the meeting's being recorded, and this will assist staff in preparing the minutes. Welcome. I'll turn it over to staff for a presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Laura Richstone, Senior Planner with Current Development. This evening, let me sorry. There we are. This evening, I will be presenting a proposed request from Natera Inc. to install an emergency generator and associated infrastructure on their project site. The agenda tonight will start with a presentation by staff, myself, which will include an overview of the project site and its compliance with the zoning regulations, then move on to questions and comments, and conclude with a formal action by the commission. The applicant is represented this evening in person by Michelle Chadwick, project manager from CAS Architects, and by Chris Chaudhry from Natera Inc. As mentioned, the request for tonight is to consider a conditional use permit amendment, minor plan development amendment, and design review to allow a new 2.5 megawatt emergency generator with associated enclosure at the rear of the existing main structure, removal and consolidation of existing service yard areas, and the installation of a 2 megawatt temporary generator to serve the building during construction. The Natera project site, highlighted here in blue, is located at 201 Industrial Road near the Quarry Road intersection. It's north of the PG&E service yard, immediately adjacent to Highway 1 at the rear, and is surrounded by industrial and automotive uses. The project site is located in the Harbor Industrial Area, which was annexed into the city in 1997. In 1999, a planned development for a new 4-story building to allow a 50-50 split between office and laboratory use was approved. Building construction started in 2000. In 2002, a planned development amendment to allow up to 75% office space and 25% laboratory space was approved through Ordinance 1312. This PD amendment also included a formal parking agreement to provide 190 parking spaces on site for the workers at 150 Industrial Road across the street to use. Since then, various sign and tenant improvement permits have been issued. The zoning for the project site is Plan Development 18, which is controlled by City Ordinance number 1312. The site is 4.7 acres in size and located in the future northeast specific plan area. The proposed generators and associated enclosures will result in a 48% lot coverage and a total of 651 parking spaces, which meet zoning regulations. No changes to the height or size of the main building are proposed. 3 entitlements are requested tonight. 2 aspects of this project require a conditional use permit, or CUP. The first is that until the Northeast Area Specific Plan is adopted, any project that requires a design review permit or any other discretionary permit, which this project does require, is required to obtain a CUP. The second is that the original office building, which was approved in 1999, required a CUP, which is still active and runs with the land for the life of the building. Staff recommends several updates to the 1999 CUP language. These include the removal of language relating to the construction of the building itself and payment of fees, since these conditions have already been met. Updating code sections and reviewing agencies to reflect current standards and agencies, and adding performance standards related to the removal of the temporary emergency generator within 30 days of building final, and to limit the maintenance runs of the proposed generator to business hours only. Regarding the plan development amendment, any changes to a plan development are categorized as either a major or a minor change and requires a discretionary permit. As the proposed generator project does not alter the site boundary or land use of the site, increase the floor area of the main structure, nor alter the nature of the plan development itself, a minor plan development is required. The third entitlement requested is a design review permit. As required by the language of the 2002 plan development, any accessory structure for this site requires a design review. As will be shown on the next few slides, staff believes that the current proposal that reduces the number of accessory structures on site and employs a high-quality screening wall around the generator itself best preserves the views of the main structure from Highway 101, given the size of the proposed generator. So pictured here is the rear of the existing building as viewed from Highway 101, where the proposed changes will occur. Several existing accessory structures are located behind the main structure. The structures highlighted in blue will remain, while the structures highlighted in pink will be removed. To accommodate the proposed new generator, which is outlined in this salmon color, the applicant has proposed to remove 2 existing accessory structures, seen in pink, and permanently remove 5 parking spaces. The accessory structure in blue will remain. Before you is a full site plan in the upper corner and an enlarged version of the rear of the property where changes are proposed. Structures highlighted in purple are proposed to remain and include existing trash enclosures and service yards. The proposed new permanent generator and associated enclosure is highlighted in dark red adjacent to the rear building wall, while the temporary generator is highlighted in orange and immediately adjacent to Highway 101 at the rear. So starting with the permanent generator, starting with the temporary generator, the proposed temporary generator enclosure outlined in pink on the enlarged site plan in the upper right would be located adjacent to Highway 101 and screened by a 14-foot tall chain link fence with black vinyl slats. Intended for use only during construction, approximately 3 months, the temporary generator and enclosure would be removed once the permanent generator is installed and operational. Given its short duration on site, staff does not recommend any additional screening or landscaping elements for this structure. The proposed permanent generator and enclosure, highlighted in pink, would be located adjacent to an existing service yard to the left and the rear of the main wall, or the rear wall of the main building, and face Highway 101. The applicant evaluated options to consolidate the existing service yards on site, particularly the service yard shown in green, with the proposed new generator enclosure. However, the existing foundation was found to be inadequate to support the piers of the screening wall needed to withstand the wind loads from Highway 101 in the bay, and to support the structure of the new generator itself, or the weight of it. Upgrading the foundation and fencing of the green outline generator was found to be structurally complex and cost prohibitive. As an alternative, the applicant has proposed to remove an existing 593 square foot service yard, which is noted in the red bubble area to the left of the new permanent generator enclosure. The original submittal for this project included a 24-foot tall plaster wall for full screening of the proposed generator, which obscured views of the main building's 3rd floor office windows from Highway 101. In response to staff feedback, the applicant revised the design, shown here, to reduce the wall height to 15 feet 7 inches to match the height of other enclosures on site, and partially screen the generator while preserving views of the building windows from Highway 101. Landscaping in front of the proposed new generator could not be accommodated due to site constraints and backup widths. However, additional landscaping has been proposed in front of the existing surface yard, highlighted in green, or the green arrows, to further soften views from Highway 101. Pictured here is a comparison between the staff recommended design and the alternative design that blocks more windows of the third story of the structure. Staff believes that the enclosure with the reduced wall height is the most visibly unobtrusive, but seeks guidance from the Planning and Transportation Commission on their preferred design. Regarding zoning compliance, the property is zoned under Plan Development 18. This is governed by Ordinance 1312, which requires design review for all accessory structures. In addition, the ordinance does not impose a maximum lot coverage for this site, but only limits lot coverage to what is approved by the commission. The current site contains 6 accessory structures, 4 service yards, and that host a variety of utility and service equipment, and 2 trash enclosures. The current proposal would reduce the number of accessory structures on site by 1, so from 6 to 5, and result in 909 square feet of net new enclosure area and a total lot coverage of 48% after the removal of the temporary generator. This is a 0.44% increase in lot coverage over existing conditions. Based on the 2002 planned development amendment that allowed up to 75% of the building to be office space, 496 parking spaces were required to serve the project site, 201 industrial, and 190 spaces were required on the project site to serve 150 industrial, the building across the road, through a shared parking agreement. Since 2002, various tenant improvements have shifted the ratio of office to laboratory space on site to 65% office space and 35% laboratory space approximately. Accounting for the parking spaces dedicated through the shared parking agreement to 150 Industrial Road and the permanent removal of 5 surface parking spaces to accommodate the permanent generator, the project meets the minimum parking requirements. While the staff report states that there would be a surplus of 9 parking spaces on site, I would like to note that this is an error, and that actually there would be a surplus of 11 spaces on site after the completion of the proposed project. The city noise ordinance regulates all noise generating devices within the city. Noise levels below 70 decibels in an industrial area are deemed satisfactory, with no additional studies or regulations required. Measured from the northern property line, which is on the left, which is their closest adjacent neighbor, both the temporary generator and the permanent generator meet the city noise regulations and fall below the 70 decibel thresholds. Noise levels that would be experienced at the southern property line to the right would be even lower due to the increased distance of the generators from that property line. For maintenance purposes, the permanent generator is required to run for 30 minutes once per month to remain operational. Condition number 6 has been added to limit these maintenance runs to business hours, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. This was done to forestall any potential conflict with potential residential units that may be permitted under the future Northeast Area Specific Plan. For employees within the existing office/laboratory building on site, further noise attenuation would be achieved by the main building itself, and from additional foam insulation that would be installed on the interior of the proposed screening walls of the enclosure. No further noise attenuation measures are required to adhere to the city's noise ordinance. Public notices for this project were mailed on June 3rd to all property owners within 300 feet of the project site, and a notice was posted on site and published in the newspaper on June 5th. As of today, no public comments have been received. Should the commission decide to move forward, here's the motion before you. And this concludes my staff presentation. The applicant and their design team have not prepared a presentation, but are available for any clarifying questions, as am I. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Laura. We appreciate that. Okay, great. So first, let's start with any questions that commissioners may have to clarify what's in the staff report or what's not in the staff report. Why don't I start down at this end with Commissioner Bundy?
Hi, thank you very much for the staff report. My questions are about the double containment of the fuel, both for the temporary unit and the permanent unit. Can you speak a bit to the requirements for that and how double containment is provided to protect water quality?
I will defer to the applicant to talk about the generators.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michelle. Is your question if it has double containment?
Yeah, just speaking to that and the compliance related item about that.
Yes, so the permanent generator does have a belly tank, so it is double contained. And then the temporary generator is actually a generator that comes on a flatbed. So think of it like a long truck. And so its fuel is self-contained as well.
Thank you. That was my only question. I'm sure you guys will hit noise and views. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Castaneda?
Just a couple of questions. Could you explain, the packet on page 20 is talking about a parcel merger.
Yes. So, yes. The conditions of the original development in 1999 required that the two parcels be merged. That never occurred. And now the building is built over two parcels, which in the planning world is not ideal. So staff has talked to the applicant and we have reminded them of this condition. And while we will not hold up the generator permit, we are working with them, with the owner, to submit for a parcel merger so that any future development on site will not have possible issues with building across property lines.
Okay, thank you. I do have one other quick question. Am I right that some landscaping is being removed where the new enclosure is going to be? And I wanted to know if the landscaping that's being added is at least as much as being removed. It looked to me in some place in the packet that there was some landscaping being removed.
Yeah, yes. So this picture and the picture on the next slide might help. So this picture is the site as it is now. The landscaping on site is around the blue enclosure.
Okay.
So this is existing, and then the proposed is here. So what the applicant has elected to do is to re-landscape a little bit in front of the side and rear, or the front and sides of that blue enclosure, with new plants that are more robust than just what is on site right now.
And so will it be more landscaping that is being removed, or at least as much as being removed?
Visually, yes. There might be less plants, but it will provide more coverage.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I had the same question about the parcel merger. So we'll go over here to the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. A couple of questions. A 2.5 megawatt generator is a really big generator. That generates a lot of electric power. Having said that, new generators are cleaner than old generators, and we're removing several old generators. But diesel is still the fuel, and diesel particulate is a toxic air contaminant. I'm curious if the applicant was asked to look at other kinds of backup that don't involve diesel fuel, like battery backups.
No, they were not. Staff did not ask. In general, if an applicant says this is the size and type of generator we would like to pursue, we leave it up to them as the property owner. But they're here now to talk about why they went with a diesel option, if you would like to ask.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. Thank you.
So regarding the diesel generator, it is will require Bay Area Management Quality Standards. It's a Tier 4 diesel generator, and given the existing infrastructure on the site, with smaller multiple smaller generators that are being removed. This was based on the recommendation from the electrical contractor. So the best interface of taking an existing building that has backup and getting, Natera is a biotech company that has a lot of labs that needs a lot of backup power for their equipment. And so that's the best way that I can explain it, is that it will comply with all the guidelines, all the requirements, all the air standards. Just from the perspective of the electrical engineers, diesel was the most efficient and effective way to back up the building.
Thank you for that. And yes, Tier 4 generators are the cleanest generators made, and it is a very heavily regulated piece of equipment. But just having said that, having some mix of battery backup to allow for a smaller generator would have meant a little less pollution generated on site. But I understand you're within your rights to switch it out. My second question is, for the two designs that were presented, does the stack height for the generator remain the same regardless of which design option we choose?
Correct, yes.
And what is the stack height?
It's about 25 feet and change, 25.6, 25.3. It's, you can kind of see it there.
Right. I see it. Yeah.
Half measured at 25.3, I think. I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah, that's right.
And do you have an estimate as to about how far from the building the stack is?
So yes. Let's see. It's not pictured here, but when I measured it on the site plan, the generator is tilted a little bit in relation to the building wall, which is straight. So it ranges from like 5 to 9 feet from the building wall. I did talk to building and fire to see if that was appropriate separation, because it seemed close. And in talking with our reviewers, they said it was okay to build through building and fire code to be that close to the building.
And that is something that the Bay Area Air District will look at when they model the emissions. I know a little bit about this. Yes. And you did say they're going to test it once a month for 30 minutes when people are in the building. So, and you will have to tell them in the application how far it is from that building. So there's just a little bit of a concern on my part with the proximity to a building that has people in it for those 30 minutes a month. Mm-hmm. But I will, it's very thoroughly reviewed at the Air District, and so I know that if there needs to be any adjustments, that will happen through the Air District review. So.
Definitely, and I can defer to the applicant, but I don't think those windows are operational, so they don't open.
So they don't open.
They do not.
That's helpful, okay. And it's not that it's below from the air intake for the building, is it? It's not near that?
It's near the bottom 2 floors, and yes, are the garage floor, garage levels, which are open.
Open, uh-huh.
I'm not quite sure about the air intake for the building, if you know, Michelle.
It is not. It is not. And I was just looking back at the distance. So I think we might be, because here's the building. 15, let's just say.
I measured it. I think it was around 9-10 feet at the farthest.
Yeah, from here to back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I think it was from here to here.
Yeah, because the stack will be like this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for those clarifications. Those are the only questions I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Anand?
Thank you. I just have one question, which is kind of derived from Commissioner Garvey's question. Is it right to assume that the one new generator's emissions will be lower than the 4 cumulative emissions that are being replaced? Is that the case?
Yes, that's the case. It's because the multiple smaller, older generators are older. And so again, with the new generator, by all today's standards, it'll be much more cleaner.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other clarifications that commissioners may have? No. Okay, great. So let's go to comments from the public. Again, if anyone would like to make a comment, please fill out a speaker card in the back and bring it on over to the dais. or you can raise your hand, and I'll recognize you. On the Zoom meeting, which we'll go to in just a minute, the meeting number is on the screen. It's meeting 886-3546-7439. And you can dial in by phone, or you can be on computer. The phone number is 669-900-9128. And you can raise your hand on Zoom by clicking on reactions and then raise hand. If you're on the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and then to unmute, you would press *6. Is there anyone present in chambers who has a question they would like to make or a comment? Okay, seeing none. Lynette, do we have any hands raised on Zoom to make a comment on 201 Industrial Road?
There are none.
Okay. We'll give it a few more seconds to see if anyone changes their mind online. Okay, any hands raised, Lynette?
There are none.
Okay. With that, I think we need a motion to close public comment.
I move that we close public comment.
Thank you. And a second?
I second that.
Thanks. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Bundy?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garvey?
Yes.
And Chair Clements.
Yes. Thanks. So now on to commissioner comments, discussion. You can still ask questions if they come to you, but would like to hear what you think about this item. And why don't we start to my right with the vice chair?
Thank you, Chair. A Tier 4 generator is the cleanest diesel generator made, and I appreciate that the applicant is putting that in, and that the testing will be kept to a minimum of 30 minutes a month. And I believe all of the findings have been met, and I will support the project.
Thank you. And we'll keep going to the right. Commissioner Anand?
I also support this project. Any move towards greener and cleaner air is welcome in the city. The only thing I would encourage is to be mindful of the other neighbors, especially PAMF next door. It's a clinic, so just be mindful of construction hours and minimize any kind of disruption that might be foreseen. So overall, I'm supportive of the project.
Thank you. And we'll go around to Commissioner Bundy.
Thank you very much for the staff report. As always, good job. I appreciate the applicant iterating with staff on the screening. I do prefer the lower screening that preserves the views out the window, and we get to see a little bit of the structure, which I think is actually quite interesting. I think that the staff report demonstrates conformance with our requirements, and I'm supportive.
Thank you. Commissioner Castaneda?
I also prefer the current proposal because of the matching heights and the less obstruction of the windows. And I also think that the drawings of the structure actually are an improvement over the way the property looks now. I think the findings have been met, and I support the project.
Thank you. I also support this action. I, too, prefer the lower screens. I think the higher screens are quite obtrusive when you look at the building and what you notice about the building. It is very present, and so the lower level is clearly better from a design perspective to me. I appreciate the thoroughness of the staff analysis and explanation, and appreciate staff processing this while the parcel merger needs to still occur. We realize that business moves at a pace that we need to respond to. So I thank you for moving this forward, and thank the applicant for processing that parcel merger. And I am here to support the action. So with that, would someone like to make this motion?
I move that the Planning and Transportation Commission approve the request for a conditional use permit amendment, minor plan development amendment, and design review to allow a new 2.5 megawatt permanent emergency generator with associated enclosure at the rear of the existing main structure, removal and consolidation of existing service yard areas, and installation of a 2.0 megawatt temporary generator to service the building during construction in conformance with Plan Development Number 18, based on the findings and for the reasons incorporated in the staff report.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Thank you. Can we take a vote, please?
Commissioner Anand, excuse me. Commissioner Bundy?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garvey?
Yes.
And Chair Clements?
Yes. Thank you. The Planning and Transportation Commission's action will be final unless it is appealed to the City Council within 10 days of the date of the action. The deadline to file an appeal is 5 p.m. on Thursday, June 26th, 2025. Great. Thank you very much. We are on to our second public hearing this evening. We're going to start the public hearing tonight. We're going to hold it open through tonight. We're going to continue the conversation at a future commission meeting. This item is public hearing item 7B for 1287 Industrial Road, APN 046-211-320. It's a request for a conditional use permit amendment and transportation demand management plan to allow for additional uses within an existing 15,631 square foot vacant tenant space. We are continuing, this item has been continued to August 4th, 2025, and the Planning and Transportation Commission meeting that night. And again, the public hearing will open tonight and will stay open into that meeting. If you would like to make a public comment on 1287 Industrial Road, please fill out a request to speak, a speaker form located in the rear of the council chambers, and submit to staff. Or you can raise your hand. If you are on Zoom, or if you'd like to get on Zoom, the Zoom meeting number is 886-3546-7439. You can also call 1-669-900-9128 and then enter that meeting ID. If you are on Zoom, you can raise your hand by clicking on reactions and then the raise hand icon. If you are on the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. And then when you're called on, you can press *6 to unmute. Would anyone physically present like to make a comment on this item tonight? No? Seeing none, we'll turn to people who are on Zoom. Lynette, do we have any hands raised to make a public comment on 1287 Industrial Road?
There are none.
Okay. We'll give it just a few more seconds. If anyone on Zoom would like to change their mind and raise their hand, you're welcome to take public comments tonight on this item. Lynette, do we see any any hands raised for 1287?
There are none.
Okay, thank you. So we will keep the public hearing open until the next item, but we do need a motion to continue this to the following meeting, August 4th. In honor of last meetings, Vice Chair, would you like to make the motion?
I will move that we continue this item to the next Planning and Transportation Commission meeting on August 4th, 2025.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Anand?
Yes.
Commissioner Bundy?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garvey?
Yes.
Chair Clements?
Yes, thank you. Okay, we are on to item 8 on tonight's agenda. This is a study session. We're going to receive a presentation, and then commissioners will provide input on the downtown specific plan. And I believe we have Lisa Porras presenting. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Clements, Vice Chair Garvey, and Commissioners. My name is Lisa Porras, Planning Manager for the Advanced Planning Division, and I will be giving this part of this presentation for you all this evening. And once again, this is a study session, so I would like to, first of all, thank you all for your attention as we continue to make a lot of strides forward on our downtown. As the Commission and members of the community are aware, we're actually actually working on three components, three big projects relative to the downtown. One is completion of a streetscape master plan that was adopted recently, recommended by this body, and then adopted by our city council. The next aspect of the project is a specific plan or a policy document itself, which is still underway. And the third piece is actually an implementation item that our city council authorized to advance for construction on June 9th. I'll talk about this a little bit more later as it relates to what we'll get into this evening. I would like to introduce once again to the commission and members of the public watching at home or online who our project team is. This is a project that's being led by the City of San Carlos's Advanced Planning Division, myself, Al Savey, our Community and Economic Development Director, Randall Bustos, our Senior Planner, and then very much involved is our Senior Traffic Engineer from Public Works, Hanya Shmandi. The prime consultant is WRT, helping the city with this effort. We have James Stickley here tonight, who will be joining me in the presentation. Rohat Tak is also available, and Poonam Narkar, who is not available, has also been very much involved in this project. The sub-consultants available this evening are from WTrans. We have Mark Spencer joining us in person, who is one of the senior principals and president of WTrans, who's focusing a lot on helping us through the traffic analysis. And then we also have Brian Canepa, principal as well, whose specialties include parking and transportation demand management. Brian will also be giving a part of the presentation this evening, and he will be joining us virtually. So for tonight's study session, we wanted to just give you an overview of what we'll be talking about this evening. I'll touch on what this project is and provide just a general summary, a refresher. I also want to go over the vision and guiding principles because while I recognize that we've seen the vision and heard about these guiding principles in the past, they really serve as the foundational legs, if you will, that help inform how we develop policies and how we think about making modifications to our development standards underneath zoning. So those are important to kind of touch base on before we sort of dive into it. As with all things we do, I do want to recognize all of the civic engagement that has gone on in the past and continues to inform this project relative to every level, every document, if you will. A lot of the civic engagement has gone on to inform the streetscape master plan, but is also heavily used to help inform the policy recommendations and development standards. The bulk of tonight's conversation will refer to the policy recommendations and the goals and proposed policies under part of 8 different thematic areas, if you will, and I'll be introducing those in just a moment. We do also want to talk about some of the refinements that we want to make to the zoning ordinance relative to development standards within that zoning ordinance. So just to introduce the project once again, and reminding ourselves of the long road that we've been on, but a lot of the milestones that we reached, is that this project, preparing a specific plan for the city, really came about since 2021 when the City Council adopted a goal for their downtown in their 2021 strategic plan. The goal was for the City of San Carlos to work with residents, property owners, business owners, committees, commissions, the Chamber of Commerce, and all other interested members of the community to develop a plan to understand and ensure that the downtown meets the needs of the community and businesses now and into the future. So to accomplish that strategic objectives, as I mentioned before, there are 2 different but complementary documents that are essential for fulfilling this City Council goal. One is a specific plan, which I mentioned just before, and the other is the Streetscape Master Plan. And this is just a reminder that once the specific plan is adopted, together with the adopted Streetscape Master Plan, these are the 2 documents that are going to be governing what happens in the downtown over the next 20 years. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean over the next 20 years we can't do amendments. We do amendments to our plan when we need to do them and if there are very good reasons. But stepping forward, this is our ideal vision and the policies that we want to set in place that will help guide future transformation in the downtown. So they're pretty significant documents that work together. As you know, the Streetscape Master Plan will govern improvements to the streets, everything that happens in the right-of-way, the public realm over the next 20 years, and it has a lot of detail about that I know you're all very familiar with. But what the downtown specific plan does is it sets forth official goals, policies, and standards. And we can look at these as the legal requirements, as this commission is very, very, very much familiar with as you approve private development projects, because you're looking at those projects as they are consistent with zoning standards. So we want to put forward refinements to our development standards, but in a context that serves this vision for the downtown area. So the downtown specific plan serves as our regulatory policy document. So let's look at the vision and the guiding principles again. And I do want to take a moment to just read the vision for you, because you're going to notice keywords or key themes. And this is important to keep in mind as we look at the policies that are being proposed for the downtown specific plan. So the vision, for downtown is that downtown really serves as the heart of the entire city of San Carlos, providing a vibrant, pedestrian-friendly, safe, charming, futuristic, and accessible destination for the community, and strongly expresses its unique culture and heritage. There's a lot in that sentence. It is a place for celebration and gathering that offers diverse and authentic experiences through a draw of food, retail, services, art, and music in a visually attractive environment for the growing community. Downtown is an inclusive place with easy access for all, opportunities for housing and businesses of all types, and inviting spaces for all users. Downtown San Carlos is a sustainable district with a landscape that supports ecological community health and well-being. And all of this is reflected in the policies that are before you this evening. So in support of the vision, there's also key guiding principles that dive into a little bit of different subject areas that also help to inform the policy structure of the downtown specific plan. So we can kind of think of these as our shared values, what we're leading with. And the first guiding principle is placemaking and identity, which essentially means that the downtown plan should strive to create, through its policies and standards, create a place that has a distinctive character and identity that is really unique to our city, recognizing our culture, history, and context. And this space that we're trying to create is really defined by the physical form and through the actual experience and things like programming in our downtown. That's what makes our place unique, with a unique identity. The other guiding principle has to do with mobility and connectivity. We see the downtown as a place where there is really a balance of modes, and also not a balance of modes, but modes that emphasize bicycle, pedestrian, and public transit circulation, along with an effective parking management strategies that really are serving together to support this socially vibrant, pedestrian-oriented environment that we're striving to create, while minimizing auto dependence to access the downtown, recognizing that not every single trip is made by car, that we do use our legs and we cycle and we take public transit when it's convenient to do so. The next guiding principle has to do with downtown vibrancy, recognizing that the downtown should really achieve a level of vibrancy and vitality that is consistently attracting users and shoppers through enhancing our local businesses and offering a lot of diverse programming in the downtown and in a downtown setting that is distinctive, safe, and attractive, which is going to draw that vibrancy that we're looking for. And then last but not least is equity and resilience. In thinking about the downtown, we should really be striving to make sure that it's an equitable place offering social, economic, housing, and recreational opportunities at various levels of affordability for all users, and then being resilient to address our evolving climate adaptation needs. So as I know this commission is familiar with, I do want to take a moment to recognize all of the civic engagement that has gone into this process. We often think about civic engagement really focused on the Streetscape Master Plan, but I do want to clarify that all along the way, a lot of the community feedback that we've received isn't only on just how the streets should be used or what they should look like. We received so much rich information about all of these topics that we're going to hear tonight that are also helping to inform the policies that we create. So our civic engagement strategy really, its approach really leaned on two primary different sources of feedback. The first is with the Downtown Advisory Committee, which most of you know is an 18-member committee that has been meeting with the city and our consultant team since June 22nd, 2022. So just about 3 years, and having over 11 meetings to help us with this process. Some of their key milestones including endorsing the street redesigns and then reviewing the policy recommendations. They just recently had a meeting on June 3rd. And then, of course, the other prong of civic engagement has been a community-wide effort where we reached out to different stakeholders. We went to different commissions. We had study sessions. So this is just, I won't go through all of these, but this is just to kind of visually show the amount of community engagement that has taken place over the course of these past 3 years. So now we want to jump into the policy area discussion. And before I turn it over to our consultant team to walk us through that, I just want to say that, we recognize that we're working on two specific plans, and the downtown specific plan is very different from the Northeast area specific plan. The Northeast area specific plan has some very big and bold moves, like introducing new streets and introducing new housing into a district where we've never seen it before. So the land use strategy is very different than the downtown. In the downtown, we're not introducing new streets, but we want to take our streets and improve them and repurpose them for different uses. We're not introducing housing because we already have housing. So a lot of the recommendations that you see here are really about fine-tuning a good foundation of policies and zoning standards that we already have. But we do want to walk you through these and kind of show you our thinking, how we think we can improve the downtown through new policies that are much more detailed than what we currently have in our general plan that governs the downtown. So there are 8 different areas: land use and urban design, prosperity and economic development, mobility and transportation, parking and transportation demand management strategies and standards, public realm, public art, sustainability and resiliency, and infrastructure. And you will hear about all of these this evening. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Jim Stickley to get us started on land use and urban design.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Members of the Planning Commission, it's a pleasure to be here. Lisa really sort of set the table for why we're here. A couple things I wanted to say about the sort of the DNA of this plan. The Streetscape Master Plan that you're familiar with is kind of the core of this plan. It's what's driving most of the plan, and however, that needs to be codified into policies and standards. So that's what the specific plan does. It gets specific about the policies, and it gets specific about the standards, to put that in the language needed so that you can regulate that as change happens in the downtown. The land use component, as Lisa said, is secondary in this specific plan. Your land uses are already regulated by your new zoning code, and it's quite clear, and also your objective design standards that are all coming into completion now. So you're in pretty good shape from a land use standpoint to regulate private development, but there are some tweaks. So the first chapter of the specific plan is sort of about that fine tuning. So we're going to go through what some of those are on the land use side. I'm going to be presenting the land use and the economic development components, number 1 and 2, and then my colleague Mark Spencer is going to present the mobility and transportation, and then my other colleague Brian Canepa, who's I think out there somewhere. Brian, I hope you're out there. He's out there. He's out there, yeah. He's going to be presenting the parking and TDM piece, and then we're going to come back. I'm going to go through public realm and public art, and then my colleague Rohit is going to present the sustainability, resilience, and the infrastructure pieces. We're going to try to do that quickly and efficiently because we kind of want to get to your comments and get some discussion on any questions that you have. You have received the full document of goals and policies separately. That serves as a really nice outline of everything that we're trying to accomplish in the specific plan. So if you've had a chance to go through that, or even if you haven't and you want to get comments to us on that document, that would be the most thorough way to go through everything that is contained in the plan. What we're going to go over tonight are just some select pieces, places where we see sort of a significant change, or as applies to the land use piece, what some of those tweaks are that we're suggesting are needed from a land use standpoint. But otherwise, in the other section, it's like, okay, what are the specific dimensions, the specific standards that will actually accomplish what we set out to in the streetscape master plan and now in the specific plan. So starting with land use and urban design, starting with the overall goal, the downtown specific plan aims to create a vital social place for the community while strengthening a distinctive character and identity for San Carlos, rooted in its culture, history, and context. This identity will be defined by thoughtful land use, a physical form of the built environment, and the overall experience of the downtown area. So some of the ways that we accomplish that, and I apologize, there's an error on this slide that Samtrans parcel is not being moved to the middle of the intersection. Right in the middle. That parcel is going to stay right where it is. And so that got shifted in our graphic. Apologize for that. But the point of this is that we are proposing a zoning change here from MUDC 100 to MUDC 120. The land use policies behind that are listed on the side. I'm not going to read those in their entirety, but this does represent an increase in height from 50 feet, which is what the MUDC 100 is, to 70 feet, which is what the MUD 120 is. And you can see an illustration of that in this diagram, in this cross-section. And the reason I think for that is that, one, that Samtrans parcel represents a great opportunity to bring new uses, new residents, new office workers, whatever that mixed-use project becomes, into the downtown area. And just north of there is an MUD 120 zone. So this would simply become consistent with what's further north on Laurel and in those two blocks. The other part of this recommendation is that we think that this step back would be appropriate on the Samtrans parcel. So you can see on the left here that we have a 4-story height that is consistent with the MUDC 100, which would be on the other side of the street. And so we would match that. And then there would be a step back, and then there would be 2 additional levels allowed beyond that. And we think the step back would be a good way to sort of mirror the scale that occurs across the street, but still allow that additional density. And we think that the width of this street will absorb that. This is a wider corridor. It's wider than Laurel, and it will, we think it will feel like a comfortable scale with those height restrictions. So you can see here that the current, well, this is another change that we're proposing related to the MUDC 100. Currently, there is a step back required at the 3rd level, so that the final or 4th level would be step back a minimum of 6 feet. We think that may not be needed, that is maybe an unnecessary restriction. And again, it has to do with the scale ratios, this 1-to-2 ratio, which is sort of the general guideline used in the urban design industry as to what proportion feels right, so that the building heights are essentially half the height of the street, the total street corridor width. And that just through many case studies and, being proven out in actual built places, this is sort of the scale that feels comfortable from a human standpoint, lets light in. And so that's sort of the ratio that we use as a guideline. And if you apply that, San Carlos, again, will absorb this 50-foot height, and that feels right, and that you don't really need this step back. And I think, part of our charge is not only to figure out what feels right for the downtown in terms of scale and character and those things, but how do we also attract developers? And if you start putting all of these restrictions on a parcel, it's much more difficult for development to pencil. And in this day and age, it's even more difficult for development to pencil because of materials costs and labor costs and financing costs and everything else. So if there are some ways that we can simplify and remove restrictions that really aren't necessary, then we think that this might be a place to do that. So that applies to San Carlos Avenue only, not to Laurel. So just moving along now, moving to Laurel Street. So again, this is tweaking, not recommending any change in zoning. So this would still be the MUDC 100. But is there anything that we need to do to make this function better, from a standpoint of ground floor uses, building scale, and those kinds of things? And again, if you look at this ratio rule of thumb, we think that the step back that is currently required at the 3rd level could actually move to the 4th level. So again, it's a way to remove a little bit more restriction from this parcel. We think that still feels fine on the scale of Laurel Street. You know, these ratio boxes now are smaller, right? Because we're on a smaller street corridor, but if you put the 2-to-1 ratio, you know, it reaches the top of the 3rd floor. And so we think that's where the step back should be, not on the floor below that, on the 2nd floor. So that's a tweak that we're also recommending as part of this. And you can sort of see this in its full view here of Laurel Street. So 3rd story step back on both sides, and you can see how that fits with the 1-to-2 ratio. And again, it's not a huge change in terms of what the current zoning is, but it does give a little bit more leeway to make these parcels feasible in terms of when they decide to redevelop.
Ground floor height.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Previous. Okay, yeah. So there's another important change, and we know that this has been considered a while back in terms of what the ground floor height should be. And so we've been working not only ourselves, but with our retail and economics consultant, and sort of asking the question, what do we need to do to bring in high quality retail to ensure that we get the kind of quality retail that we want on the ground floor? And we think that the 12 feet is too low. You know, that feels a little cramped, and that should be 14 to 16 feet. And the range is because for a smaller space, 14 feet works fine, but if you have a much larger, more expansive space on the ground floor, it needs to be even higher to feel right in terms of its comfort and scale in a retail environment. So we're suggesting a change from 12 to this range of 14 to 16, and then we're going to establish the threshold of what square footage size of that space triggers, you know, the higher ceiling height. So that's another change that we are recommending as part of the specific plan. And then this is what we already went over. Okay, now this gets into awnings. So this gets into a little fine grain, but it's important because, you know, we're changing the whole structure of parklets to sidewalk dining. And you remember that from the streetscape plan, that was the big move, right? We're saying parklets were a thing that was necessary in COVID, and now we're going to change all that. We're going to provide these 20-foot wide sidewalks, and we're going to have enough room to put outdoor dining right up against the storefront, up against the restaurant front, and we're going to allow a nice wide apron of 8 feet in order to do that. And then we want the awning regulations to follow suit. So we want those to also be allowed to be 8 feet in width, and we want the heights of those awnings to be sort of, you know, tall, but within the envelope of the store height. So some of these awnings might be horizontal, but some of them might be sloped. So the front edge could go as low as, I think we're saying 8 or 9 feet, but then they slope up to, you know, perhaps the full height of the retail storefront height. So just regulating that, naming that in terms of those minimum dimensions. Also, we talk about the the ability to have protective sides on the awning, so you could have these roll-down panels. And, you know, this is the European model. Many of you are familiar in inclement weather. You can roll down the sides and even sometimes roll down the front, and you get a little protection from the rain or from the cold weather. So we want to have that ability here as well to sort of be able to extend the season, right, for outdoor dining as much as possible, maybe even do it year-round. And I think we have a couple of photographs of how that works. Here you can start to see the side panels. The one on the right has side panels that have been taken down. And then same thing here, side panels. So it's this kind of thing. How do we just provide this multi-seasonal function for the awning structures? So we're showing those detail standards, dimensions, and then some guidelines in terms of the design of these awnings. The land use regulations. So again, tweaking, not a lot of big changes in terms of allowable uses, but we are suggesting not to allow automobile and vehicle sales and leasing in the MUDC 100, and that was a provisional before according to certain conditions, and we're saying no, not appropriate in this downtown core area. So that's one change that we're recommending. And then the other change we're recommending is to be a little bit less restrictive on general personal services. So just allowing those things to happen just sort of according to the market. It's part of the mix of retail out here, and we think that being that restrictive as the current zoning is not needed. So I think those are the main things on land use. I wanted to move to what we're calling prosperity and economic development. The goal here, downtown San Carlos will be a dynamic economic hub that fosters entrepreneurship, enhances infrastructure, and promotes arts and culture to create a thriving, inclusive, and prosperous community. Through strategic placemaking, branding, and enriched by a mix of land uses, the downtown core will support both retail and dining destinations, strengthen economic vitality, and provide for everyday needs through a welcoming and engaging public realm that supports residents, visitors, and businesses alike. So the thing I wanted to say about this is a lot of the recommendations in the entire plan sort of stem from these goals. So we only have 7 policies under prosperity and economic development. There may be a couple more by the time the drafting of the plan is all said and done, but it's pretty straightforward and it's very clear. And as we go through these, I think you can see that all the things that are being talked about here are things that are addressed in these other chapters, like either in the land use or the public realm design, because all of those things are contributing to the economic vitality of the downtown. But nevertheless, we want these specifically codified as prosperity policies. So that's what this chapter is about. So the first policy, the downtown core will be activated through placemaking strategies, fostering entrepreneurship, infrastructure improvements, arts and culture initiatives, and promoting equity to be inclusive of all members of the community. Policy 2, the downtown core will be positioned as a special destination through branding and marketing strategy and programming of community events and activities. And those programmed uses and activities will be coordinated between Parks and Rec Department and the city's Economic Development Division. And that's policy 3. Policy 4, the downtown core 11 and 1200 blocks of San Carlos, and the 6, 7, and 800 blocks of Laurel shall seek to create a mix of uses, including dining, retail and everyday services, banking, shipping, salon, doctors, etc., and needs to become a downtown that supports the local workforce and businesses. Policy 5, designs for public realm of the downtown core shall reinforce economic prosperity by providing an inviting, vibrant, safe, and comfortable downtown experience for all users.
Sorry, Mark, can you advance the slide so we can read along?
Sorry about that. There you go. And then policy 6, support and activate the 600 block plaza by enabling program and infrastructure for temporary small business pop-ups that enhance vibrancy and support local entrepreneurs. And we're going to get into a little more detail there in the public realm chapter in a minute. And then lastly, ensure proactive coordination and outreach with local businesses during public realm and streetscape improvements. So there will be disruption, so we need to be really coordinated with the businesses as these different phases of the public space are rolled out. The city will develop construction plans that minimize disruption and support business continuity through all project phases. So that's the economic development piece, and then I want to turn it over to Mark to talk about mobility and transportation. There you go, Mark. Yep.
Okay, we'll take it to the next section here. Oh, good. Okay. So mobility and transportation. Now, you previously saw the streetscape plan. A lot of this is part of that. This is going to dive into the policies that support that. And I'll be talking about things like pedestrian policy, bicycle, transit, as well as vehicular mobility. So I'll take you through each of those in turn. The overarching goal with the mobility and transportation element of this. The downtown plan sets forth a comprehensive framework for a multimodal transportation network that prioritizes active transportation, safety, accessibility, and connectivity while fostering a pedestrian-friendly, vibrant, and equitable downtown that serves the needs of all residents, workers, and visitors in alignment with the Downtown Streetscape Master Plan. If I was to narrow that down and focus on one key word in all of that, it's multimodal. It's the combination of everything that we're basically creating a system for everybody, all modes. We're not telling people they can't drive and they can't park. We're creating a more balanced system for downtown that's going to help the vibrancy of downtown, make it work, and also serve all needs. So to begin with, when I talk about a balanced network, sort of two key policies to support that. One is looking at an evaluation of long-term vehicular traffic modifications. So this is vehicular traffic now, including Holly Street, the swing lanes, which basically means, hey, can we talk about maybe having one of these be one-way during peak hours, much like we do now on Holly, with restricting parking to increase capacity on that. That's an option. Emerging transportation technologies. Think about signal timing or coordination or other things that help vehicles move through a system more efficiently. And congestion mitigation strategies to further support the goal and policies for a vibrant and safe pedestrian-oriented downtown. The goal is to move vehicular traffic, but not at the expense of everything else or the safety of everything else. There's trade-offs, so it works for everybody. Next policy would be collaboration with Samtrans, with Caltrans in this case, and the Grand Boulevard Initiative program, which is a very extensive program throughout the El Camino corridor, so that we plan and implement coordinated improvements on El Camino Real, enhancing safety, mobility, and streetscape quality to make that consistent with the Downtown Streetscape Master Plan. If I were to phrase this a different way, it's pieces of a puzzle that have to fit together so that each one supports one another and is not working against other programs. The pedestrian experience is one that we've talked about and thought about quite a bit with the team. The first policy, right up top, prioritize development of the 700 block of Laurel as a pedestrian-only plaza, supporting the vitality, the vibrancy, and equity for all users. We've already been enjoying this environment on the 700 block for some time, and we want to make sure that we can enhance that, preserve that, and keep that going and make it work as sort of a centerpiece, in essence, and one of the anchors for this program. The second policy, prioritizing the pedestrian experience and the corresponding street character for all streets within the downtown core. Now, how do we define that? And so it's shown on the map, and to define it in words, the 1,100, 1,200 blocks of San Carlos Avenue, 600, 700, and 800 blocks of Laurel, and the 1,100 and 1,200 blocks of Cherry, Olive, and the 1,100 and 1,200 blocks of Arroyo. And those are the key elements, key blocks. The bicycling experience, equally important, and basically being very consistent with the city's bicycle master plan. Actively pursuing public transit connectivity by improving first and last mile connections to Caltrain and bus services through implementation of active transportation infrastructure. Active transportation meaning walking and bicycling, things that you're active. You're also active when you're driving, by the way, but maybe just not as active. I think you burn more calories on a bike than driving a car, depending on how you drive, of course, but that's not in the program. The other policy, this is one that I really like, developing the bicycle hub on the 700 block that enhances at the entrance points. That includes secure bike stands and supportive amenities to encourage active transportation and support the 700 block, here's the key words, as a wheel-free zone. What have we heard? These kids are whizzing by me on their bicycles. They're supposed to walk the bicycle through that area. People are riding through the area. We want to make that a wheel-free zone. So we have to have a place to store the bicycles or to be able to secure that or have people. And yes, it's a bit of enforcement, and we're not trying to create a police state, but we want that environment to be preserved as a pedestrian zone. And you need to have some bicycle policy to help support that as well. So I want to make sure I didn't miss one. Okay. The mobility and transportation experience includes safe and visible bike infrastructure, incorporating bicycle lanes that are protected with vertical buffers, perhaps, green striping, high visibility, ample bike parking on the primary corridors, which means San Carlos Avenue, El Camino, Britton, Arroyo, and Laurel Street. This section, this diagram that you're looking at, is El Camino Real looking north. So picture as you're coming north from, from Britton and so forth, as you're approaching Holly, and you'll see this, and we can talk about this later if there were questions, in terms of how the lanes get reorganized on El Camino Real, such that there's a difference in the travel lanes. How do you accommodate the bike lanes? Particularly on the left side, you're seeing that pedestrian zone. So if you're looking north, that's on the downtown side of El Camino. So if you're going north, that's on the left, okay? So there's a lot of very interesting, important change. But we've also tested this to say, well, what does this mean for El Camino? Does El Camino still work? And the answer is yes, it still works as an important state corridor and a major arterial. But we can also repurpose parts of it within the boundaries that we're working with. This is San Carlos Avenue. And this one, the diagram, you're looking towards Caltrain. So picture you're standing at Laurel looking towards the Caltrain station. Similar diagram to what Jim was showing earlier. Promoting safe and visible biking infrastructure, the same policy. The ample bike parking, the green striping, the visibility, making it really clear. And in one sense, if you were looking at a map of all of downtown right now, what we're trying to do is create a strong linkage between the Caltrain station and Laurel and through the Laurel corridor. All of that connects. So having Laurel as an island without connecting to the Caltrain station does not accomplish all of the goals. Downtown, it's like an economy of scale, but it all grows so much better and works so much better when we have that full connectivity. Now, we recognize there's some future studies that will be necessary in terms of the level of network change, how San Carlos Avenue transforms on the 11 and 1200 blocks. These aren't insurmountable items. These are details, but the framework is what's being put in place here through the policies. This is Laurel, the 600 and 800 blocks looking south. So if you were on the 600 block looking towards 700, this is an example of what you would see. And the pedestrian zone and the outdoor dining on the outer edges, parking and the travel lanes being narrowed. So this is a streetscape view of what that would look like and that experience. And finally, the transit experience. And we don't want to lose sight of this because it's not just the linkage to Caltrain and the station that is so important to this. It's what do we do about bus stops to safely interface that with bike lanes, boarding islands, curb extensions. How is that going to work and be consistent with Samtrans design guidance? This diagram is sort of a higher level bird's eye view. Well, let's zoom in a little bit. And you'll see here what the bus shelter and the boarding islands and what we can do to sort of make it work with everything that we're talking about in terms of bike infrastructure, vehicular travel, as well as the enhanced transit stops. So it safely interfaces with the bike lanes and has all these features that we're talking about. So a lot of thought has been put into, hey, let's be consistent with Samtrans guidance and integrate that into our plan as well. So again, it works together. I'll stop there, certainly available for questions as they come up, but I want to keep moving through the presentation. I want to turn it over to my colleague, Brian Canepa, who is online and available to talk about the next section on parking and TDM, and I'll be advancing the slides for him as he tells me to. So, as I have the clicker, it's powered.
Brian, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Mark, for acting as my professional clicker tonight. All right. So thank you all for having me here. Pleasure to be with you tonight virtually to talk about parking and transportation demand management. Get advance the slide. So the overall goal of parking and TDM in the Downtown Specific Plan is sets forth parking management strategies that efficiently addresses parking needs, responds to changing state and federal laws, and reduces car dependency through innovative transportation demand management strategies. So kind of in a nutshell, what we're doing here is looking at strategies that not only addresses all the needs of the many users of downtown currently, but also looking to the recent changes that have taken place within state and federal laws and being able to do so in a way that reduces auto dependency. Next slide. So the two couple slides here, two couple policies here are, I'll summarize them, are essentially to manage resources as a coordinated shared system to the degree feasible. That creates a much more efficient parking system and transportation system as a whole, and working to establish parking maximums to reduce excessive parking supplies. And I'll say that that policy PTDM 3 is also very much intended to put the city in compliance with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission Transit-Oriented Communities policy. And the standards that we're recommending as part of that are, as you can see on the left. So the MTCTOC policy requires that within this certain tier group, the station group, that there be a maximum of 1 space per residential unit and 2.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet of non-residential space. And so our goal here was we looked at all the development data from the city of San Carlos since 2019, determining the average parking supply rates for various types of housing, whether it be affordable or market rate, looking at residential, looking at non-residential, and trying to come up with as flexible an approach as possible so that the city can both adhere to the MTCTOC policy, but also make sure that development isn't affected. And so the proposal right now, and this is in line with the citywide TDM and parking study that's being done, is to create essentially a two-tiered system so that by right, any residential developer coming in could build up to 0.7 spaces per bedroom for residential, 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet for non-residential, and up to 0.7 spaces per hotel room. And I'll pause there for a second. The bedroom conversion, we opted for using a spaces per bedroom rather than spaces per unit, simply because parking demand is much more strongly tied to the number of bedrooms in a residential unit, as opposed to, you know, just comparing a studio apartment, for example, to a 3-bedroom unit. If developers want to exceed that, we do offer another tier, provided that they provide certain mitigations. So that tier allows them to provide a little bit more parking, so 0.8 spaces per bedroom, 2.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet of non-residential, and 0.9 spaces per hotel room. If they opt to do one of 3 things: A, either making at least a quarter of their parking during the daytime publicly accessible to create more of that, again, that shared public pool that makes it much more efficient, implementing enhanced TDM measures, or paying in lieu parking mitigation fees that can go towards multimodal transportation assets. So again, what we're trying to do is create a system that complies with MTC TOC policy, provides flexibility. And as kind of as a point, one of the things that we did as part of this was try to provide slightly higher maximums for residential, given the market demands in this area. With very high land values, residential developers typically wish to provide more parking. Right now, market rate housing tends to provide about 0.75 spaces per bedroom, whereas offices and a lot of the non-residential actually provides about 2.1 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So we did lean on the non-residential side a little bit to increase the residential number, so that in the end they kind of work out to balance themselves. Next slide. In addition to this, the MTC TOC policy also requires that jurisdictions eliminate parking minimums in that station area. And again, this is within a half a mile of the station, the Caltrain station, which essentially covers all of downtown. AB 2097, for those of you who remember, took effect a few years ago and essentially eliminated most minimum parking requirements within a half a mile of major transit stops. And this goes just a slight step further and says that all parking minimums need to be eliminated. In addition to that, as you can see in PTDM 5, we're to actually require, as a condition of approval for all new private non-residential parking facilities, that they be made, have their parking be made publicly accessible 100% during non-business hours. So when they're not in operation, that the lots themselves would have to be publicly accessible, so that you don't end up in situations, for example, where you have, you know, a bank lot that's, you know, it's 6 p.m. on a Friday and no one can park there. AB 2097 actually currently gives staff the authority to mandate that new parking provided by shared by new development within a transit area like this be publicly accessible. So we're kind of taking our cue from AB 2097 and implementing this, that way there's a broader pool of shared parking without impacting businesses during their operating hours. We did not, I will note, we did not include residential parking facilities in this for required public shared parking, simply because of the safety mechanics that have to do with having your residential parking be publicly accessible. Next slide. PTDM 6 goes on to unbundle the parking. So unbundling parking pricing essentially means that you're separating the cost of parking from the cost of the unit itself, or commercial space. And so this would require unbundled parking pricing for all new multifamily residential projects with 3 or more units, as well as any commercial developments exceeding 10,000 square feet. Again, it doesn't change the price of the parking, but what it does is by separating out the cost of the parking from the cost of the unit, you're giving people the opportunity to not have to pay for parking if they don't have, for example, 2 cars. And this has been demonstrated to actually draw people in who own not maybe 2 cars, but 1 car. So slightly lower rates of vehicle ownership. Certain things would be exempt from it. Units with private garages, that wouldn't work. Any 100% affordable developments wouldn't be affected by this because state law doesn't allow it, or projects are financed through tax-exempt bonds. In addition to that, to the maximums that I talked about earlier, one of the key pieces that MTC allows as part of their TOC policy is the flexibility not to implement maximums on a parcel by parcel basis, but to do so on a district-wide basis. So that ultimately what they're interested in is that your overall parking supply doesn't exceed a certain threshold, even though one development might provide more parking and one might provide less. And so what we have done here is we've looked at the new general plan build-out numbers for the downtown area. And so, for example, according to MTC standards, you can build 1 space per unit. General plan build-out says there's going to be 1,516 units exactly built, and so that there can be up to 1,516 spaces for multifamily residential. And so ultimately, if you combine the roughly 1,500 with over 1,000 non-residential and 100 hotel parking spaces, that results in about 2,700 spaces that could be built downtown. And so again, you might have some market rate developments that provide slightly more, maybe affordable residential units provide slightly less. At the end of the day, though, this cap would be firm in that once it's hit, no more parking could be provided unless it was either shared parking or public parking available. But those numbers would be subject to change if the general plan was amended. Next slide. So in looking at more kind of the design aspects of parking in the downtown, this has to do with the flexible use of the actual curb space itself. We always like to say that curb space really should be used for kind of its highest and best use. And sometimes that is vehicle parking, absolutely. And that could be time-limited parking. You could have loading vehicles, either Ubers or DoorDash or whatever the case happens to be. You could have accessible parking, which of course has to be in compliance with federal law. But it also could serve other purposes. You could have bicycle parking there. You could have street trees. You could have other types of uses there that benefit the built environment and the land uses around it. And so really being able to take advantage of that where you can. Next slide. And then, as I mentioned, part of this is providing bicycle parking. And I believe it came up earlier, I think Jim or Mark had mentioned it, but providing really close bicycle parking, as close as possible to key destinations, is very important, but not so much that you're causing conflicts with pedestrians and bicyclists. And so really providing that parking in either downtown alleys or the entrances to the pedestrian plaza. So you do maintain that dismount zone. But also including bicycle parking that is both for short-term users, so someone who's just going to ride up and get a coffee and they need to just kind of quickly park their bike, or someone who's going to be there longer term, like a downtown employee. Next slide. And also the alleys, as I mentioned, are a key component to this because currently some of the alleys that are behind Laurel tend to be kind of a bit of a hodgepodge of parking spaces between the various uses that access them. And so part of the downtown specific plan on the alleys is really looking at improving and coordinating those areas so that there's kind of a seamless loading, service, and parking function so that it makes it much more fluid to move between it. And that can, and you can actually, to the degree possible, try to maximize the number of publicly accessible spaces within those alleys so that you can actually get more usage of them. One thing I will note, before we do jump on the public realm, and I was notified that the slide didn't make it in the deck, but that there are, in addition to this, transportation demand management policies that are basically in line with what we're recommending as part of the citywide TDM and parking study, such that small, medium, and large projects will have TDM requirements associated with them on a point scale that will be compliant with those of CCAG. And so happy to supply those, but those, and I apologize, the slide is not here, but all those points systems are in line with CCAG, and we are working with the other consultants and making sure that they are also in line with, similarly, the plans in the Northeast area specific plan. All right, thank you. I think I'll back to Jim.
And Brian, those are in our overall policy document, correct?
I believe so. I would have to check.
All right. Yeah. We'll double check and make sure that those are in there. So in theory, those should all be consolidated into that handout that that you all received. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mark. So I'm going to just dive into public realm here, which is sort of it's very closely associated with the mobility piece, because a lot of this is about pedestrian environment, and as Mark mentioned, that's a big piece of the multimodal approach that we're trying to rebalance things so that the pedestrian environment functions better. So the goal here in public realm, the downtown specific plan creates high quality, multifunctional public spaces and well-connected street network that fosters social interaction, promotes health and well-being, and enhances downtown's vibrancy. With an expanded tree canopy and sustainable landscaping, the downtown improves ecological resilience, air quality, and pedestrian comfort while addressing climate challenges such as urban heat island effects and stormwater management. Public spaces are designed to be inclusive, ensuring equitable access for all users while contributing to a more sustainable and visually appealing downtown environment. So that starts with, where are these key public spaces? And you already have one at the Station Plaza. So this is sort of building on that, a series of public spaces that occur, as Mark said, not only on Laurel, but also in that whole procession from the train station up San Carlos Avenue and down Laurel Street. So when you get to the 600 block, there's a plaza there soon after you enter the block. It's what we've been calling Wheeler Plaza, but it'll be renamed something more appropriate, maybe something having to do with the sister city in Japan. And then in the 700 block, you have what we've started calling Centennial Plaza, which is the central plaza of that block with its extension of Harrington Park, which will remain Harrington Park, although it will now be a new and improved Harrington Park. And then in the 800 block, there's a plaza space there also, right at mid-block, and it would be something that would be able to be drive-through in an everyday condition, but then if the block is closed off for a festival or an event, that it could serve as a little central space for that plaza. So this PR1 is specifying those three new public spaces. And then moving to the 600 block specifically, we are recommending for the 600 block, the space currently occupied by overflow public parking will be redeveloped as a multi-use public plaza. As I mentioned, this plaza will be flexible in its programmed uses and will have a performance pavilion and stage at the west end, pop-up food vendor space along its southern edge, and a large open space to accommodate a variety of activities and seasonal programs. So this diagram shows you sort of three different ways of using the 600 block plaza. In the first one on the left, you can see that it's set up for concerts. So those are all the little concert seating lined up facing the stage, which is on the west end or the lower end in this diagram. And then in the central configuration, this is more of an everyday use. These are just long beer garden picnic tables set up in the plaza. And then the food booths are over on the right side. So it's a little pop-up space, sort of maybe a linear canopy that goes along the Paris Baguette north wall, and you get your food or your beer or your lemonade, and then you can come out and sit at the picnic tables. And then on the right, a sort of a winter festival use, an ice rink that you come in and install just for, a holiday season. Maybe it's there for, for couple of weeks around Christmas and New Year's, and it's just another way to use this plaza and give it sort of a seasonal change. And this is a view of the beer garden configuration. It's more of an everyday use, and you can see the pop-up area over on the left and the stage in the background. And when the stage is not being used for concerts, it can be just a hangout space. You can put tables and chairs up there. People can sit around the edge. So it's meant to be used, either with a formal event or just for every day. And then this is set up for a concert event. You can see concert seating and the stage in use, but you could still have the pop-up food booths for events like this that happen at night. And then in the 700 block, just moving to that, the recommended action here is for the 700 block, the entire Laurel Street right-of-way will be redeveloped as a curbless, linear public plaza space, which will accommodate a variety of activities, including a wide pedestrian promenade, space for outdoor dining and retail displays on the edges, and rain garden planting areas featuring groves of trees and additional space for special programming and public art. And I think you're all familiar with this from the Streetscape Master Plan. And then the Central Plaza, what we're calling Centennial Plaza now, with a large performance pavilion and stage and water feature. Extending eastward from this Central Plaza space will be a redeveloped Harrington Park, featuring a multi-purpose plaza space, public restrooms, seating, and a rain garden with a grove of trees. The donor bricks and the current Harrington Park will be retained and incorporated into the new plaza. So this is all underway. It's part of the Phase 1 implementation that is moving forward now. We're trying to produce a bid package for the end of the year for that project. So it's moving ahead. Fasten your seatbelts. Okay, public realm expanded sidewalk. So this is a big part of what Mark refers to as our multimodal strategy, our rebalancing of the modes. And we're going from, this is the big change downtown, we're going from 9.5-foot sidewalks to 20-foot sidewalks. So it'll make a huge difference in terms of the quality of the pedestrian experience, and then the space for outdoor dining, as I mentioned earlier, moves in by the storefronts. And so that change is happening on the 11 and 1200 block of San Carlos and on the 6 and 800 blocks of Laurel. The 700 block, we don't really refer to it as 20-foot sidewalks because it's the whole width now, including the center promenade and the sides. It's all pedestrian space. And so that's what you see here in the 600 block. So if you add up the 8 feet for outdoor dining, the pedestrian zone, and then the tree strip, it all adds up to 20 feet. And the dining occurs in the 8-foot zone, but if there needs to be overflow dining, that can occur in the 5-foot tree strip as well, because that's all a paved zone. It has permeable paving in it. And then this has, as you know, parking on one side, but then that parking flips to the other side a little further down the block. And then, you know, just good soil trenches so that these street trees can really thrive long term. And then this gets into a little bit more detail about the dining and the width. So San Carlos Avenue, you can see the 20-foot width there at the top. Arroyo also has an expanded sidewalk on the north side. We couldn't do it on both sides, but essentially the solar facing side has the wider sidewalk, and that is currently used by one of the restaurants downtown. And then El Camino Real, you know, it's not as likely to be a pedestrian destination, but we still wanted to have some dining space there and a nice wide sidewalk on the west side. And then the 700 block, we're actually widening the allowable dining zone to 9 feet, even though it makes what we're calling the pedestrian zone, the 5-foot zone, a little narrower. It's fine, because if that 5 feet gets crowded, you simply just go out into the center promenade. So it's, you know, plenty of space there for pedestrians. And then in the center there, the 600 and 800 block, it's 8 feet for the outdoor dining, 7 feet for the pedestrian zone, which includes the 1 foot where the light fixtures are, and then the 5-foot tree strip, which could be overflow dining zone. And then this is all flush curb also. So 6, 7, and 800 block is all flush condition. And here you can see how that's configured in the everyday use. You can see the overflow dining happening there in the 5-foot tree strips. And then you can see how it works on market day. So those market booths fit between the trees, so the tree spacing is specified to a certain dimension so that it fits 3 tents, and then you still have room to circulate between the market booth and the tree. So all that's been figured out. And even the light fixtures have been pushed back. That's why they're next to that 6-foot pedestrian zone. It's so the market booths can push all the way back against the light fixture, and then that allows you the 20-foot clearance in the middle for the emergency access. So it's all been dialed in, and that'll all be codified, you know, with those dimensions in the specific plan. And then just briefly on public art, this is also starting to be talked about more as we get closer on the 700 block project in Harrington Park, because there are some art elements that are part of the streetscape master plan that you might remember. And so we want to codify this as something that gets specific about where those opportunities are for public art, but also what is the process that enables public art to be installed throughout the downtown. So the Downtown San Carlos Specific Plan aims to create a culturally rich and dynamic downtown through public art that reflects the city's cultural and ecological heritage by integrating art into streetscapes, alleys, plazas, and civic spaces. Community identity is strengthened, local artists are supported, and the public realm is enhanced, which fosters placemaking and inspires both residents and visitors. And as you might recall from the streetscape, the art themes express the community's cultural and ecological heritage. So So the ecological tributary coming from the south, and then this civic and cultural tributary coming from the north, and the two of those merging right there in the Central Plaza and Harrington Park. So the idea is that the art expressions express these themes: ecology from the south, cultural themes from the north, but then sort of a mixed theme there in the center in Centennial Plaza. And so some of those opportunities we think are mural art. So you can see the yellow bars are the existing mural art. So the new Sister City mural down there in the where the underpass is by Wheeler Plaza, and then the Bianchini's parking lot mural there. And so then the proposed places for public art or for the murals rather, are in Harrington Park on both sides. So starting to talk to those landowners and business owners about coordinating that so that that can coincide with the building of the new Harrington Park. And then another opportunity for later down in the 600 block plaza on the north wall of the Paris Baguette. So that's another blank wall, another opportunity for a nice piece of public art. And then the red dots are places for what we're calling art and play structures. So these are not playground structures, but they're sort of sculptures that one could climb on if one wanted to. So they're meant to be kid-friendly or maybe adult-friendly if an adult wants to climb on them. But just places throughout, in the little plaza spaces as you go along the 600, 700, and 800 blocks to have opportunities for those expressions. And then here's some examples and two of the policies that talk about that. I'm going to turn it over to Rohit for the sustainability and resilience piece.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
So as you may recall from Lisa's introduction, sustainability and resiliency is an overarching principle for this specific plan, and a policy area which puts forth policy to promote environmentally sustainable development and infrastructure that enhances downtown's long-term resilience to climate change and natural hazards, while fostering a vibrant and adaptable urban environment. This includes integrating resilient infrastructure and climate-responsive strategies to mitigate the impact of environmental challenges and ensure the sustainability of the downtown area for future generations. And to support this goal, the first policy is to implement green infrastructure through rain gardens, permeable pavements, and green roofs, and low-impact development strategies to reduce runoff and improve water quality. As seen in the first graphic, we have identified the areas on 700 block where rain gardens or green infrastructure is introduced, and the blue strips are the permeable pavements along the rain gardens to collect water, let it percolate, but also to direct towards the rain garden for percolation as well as uses as needed for recycling. And there's a cross-section next to that, which shows that the size of the rain garden will be calculated based on the runoff that is collected on this particular block. In terms of the green infrastructure, other policy is about introduction of electric vehicles charging facilities in both on-street and off-street parking spaces, that is on 600 and 800 block of Laurel Street, where parking is permitted, as well as the parking spots in the alleys, some of which could be introduced with the electric vehicle charging facilities. To promote sustainable mobility and support the adoption of clean energy transportation options throughout the downtown. As seen in this graphic, I have highlighted a light pole, which is recommended to be a smart light pole, and I'll talk about it in the infrastructure policy area, but the purpose of it is to accommodate charging facilities next to the parking spots to encourage electric vehicles within the downtown core. This is a new policy which was a result of our engagement with the DTAC. This policy is regarding green building strategies. So the new construction in the downtown shall consider green building practices such as green roofs, solar or solar-ready roofs panels, car charging facilities, bike parking and bike charging facilities, energy efficient technologies, and dual plumbing infrastructure. This is one example of our firm's implemented project where some of these strategies were introduced in a building design, right from the solar roofs, green roofs to green walls, and as well as the green infrastructure suggesting water collection, percolation, and using it for landscaping. The next policy area is infrastructure, and the goal is that the San Carlos Downtown Specific Plan aims to ensure a robust, adaptable, and future-ready infrastructure system that supports growth, enhances the quality of life, and meets the evolving needs of the community. This includes investing in modern infrastructure, embracing innovative technologies, and promoting sustainable practices to create a resilient downtown that can effectively accommodate future development and promote the overall urban experience. And to implement that, there are a few policies included here of those proposed in the specific plan. First is collaboration and partnering with California Water Services and other utility providers to align infrastructure upgrades with downtown streetscape master plan projects, ensuring seamless coordination, minimizing disruptions, and optimizing project efficiency. Here's a list of all these different service providers and owners for the utilities within the downtown core, and the policy encourages them working together in a partnership to optimize project efficiency and minimize disruptions. The second policy is upgrading of the water and sewer systems to meet growing demands and incorporate water-saving technologies in the new developments and public infrastructure. For this, we had considered the future growth within the plan area, as well as the changes in the public realm, and based on that, the minimum diameter of the water lines that need to be introduced was calculated, and as a standard suggests here, the sanitary sewer pipelines shall be increased to a minimum of 8 inches diameter, with additional upsizing needed for the lines to support future demands. So to make this downtown core and plan area future ready, some of the strategies included here about sanitary sewer pipelines, but also for other utilities are considered in the downtown specific plan. And to touch upon the point about the EV charging included smart pole lights, the plan recommends all new street lighting in the downtown core, including Laurel Street, 600, 700, 800 block,
outlining all of. So sorry to interrupt. We're having sound problems on our Zoom broadcast, so we're
gonna take a little pause.
We could take a little pause before we go into questions. Thank you for that context.
Okay.
And let's take a 5-minute break and see where we land.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Oh, it is working now. I don't know what happened, but I can
good.
hear you now. So
Okay.
you can continue.
Thank you, Lynette.
Should I go
to
back,
Lisa.
or when did we cut out?
Maybe
Oh, we
just
don't have
in
any
next
online
steps.
attendees, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so I'll just continue here. So we essentially repeated this slide from the very beginning, just as a suggestive framework for how to, if you want to go through the policy areas one by one, we're happy to do that in any particular order you like, up to the chair and the commission on how you would like us to proceed. But this is just here as some guidance. And so now with that, we are done and ready to hear from the commission and members of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you for all those great presentations on the massive amount of work that you all have done to make this plan as good as it can be. And it looks very impressive. So thank you for that. Let's open this up to any questions or comments from the public first. I don't see any folks in chambers here. Lynette, did I hear you say that there are not people online right now?
There's one person online, but there are no hands raised.
Okay. We are taking, any public comment or input. But while we're waiting for that, let's turn it to the commissioners, see if commissioners have comments. And maybe we'd like to group them, not comments, sorry, questions first. Maybe we'd like to group them and then give another round at the end of just comment overall on some things you might want to pick out as laudable or that you might want to see tweaked. So why don't we go for questions then and group these in the policy areas. I think land use and design, prosperity and economic development maybe go together first. Then we can take the mobility, transportation, the TDM together. And then public realm, public art, sustainability, infrastructure, maybe last group. So with that, any commissioner questions on land use and design or prosperity and economic development? Yes, Commissioner Castaneda.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. On land use, when you were talking about restricting car showrooms, you're talking about applying that to the entire zone?
No, just to the downtown core. So just to the 1100 block of San Carlos and the 6, 7, and 800 block of Laurel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, anywhere where they, MU DC 100 zone is, but limited to those blocks.
And does that also apply to the change from 12 feet to 14 to 16 feet? Is that the exact same region there?
Same area, yes, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense then. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, any questions again on land use, can you go back to the list, please? Thanks. Economic prosperity, the first two topics. Thanks, Lisa. There we go, wherever's close. Okay, great. A lot of information here. So clarifying questions. Yes, Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone, for all the presentations. Excellent. Just one question. I was trying to think about this ground floor plate height for retail. You were saying that 12 feet might be a little bit low, 14 to 16 feet might be better, and I agree with that, but then I think about the upper floors that are residential, and eventually there's a height limit. Does that mean that the plate height then for all of those apartments or condos that are above that comes down, and I know it won't come down below 8 feet, but people these days do like a 9-foot plate height in their dwelling, especially if it's new. How do you resolve that issue?
We think it works. So if you add up the heights and you have, we're allowing 10-foot floor to floor for the upper floor. So if this is a 50-foot height limit here on Laurel Street, and you have the top 3 floors that are 10-foot floor to floor, then that's 30 feet. And now we have 20 more feet to play with. So if you take 15 or 16 of that for the retail, then you have 4 or 5 foot left for your parapet on top. So we think it all still adds up into a, a workable building.
Thank you, that's helpful. I don't know if the plate height needs to be 10 feet, but I think it definitely needs to be 9 feet in all these new apartments. Yeah. Okay, so I appreciate that you've thought about that. Yeah. Okay, thank you, that's all.
Thanks. Any other questions on land use and economic prosperity?
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner.
So, thank you. The visuals really helped, especially the photographs with the enclosures, the European-style enclosures. I had a question about our small businesses that also exist in downtown and may not have that deep pockets to operationalize something like this. So, what kind of equity measures or any assistance? Is there a plan to bake that into this program just so we don't push out any small business that can't afford to implement, to be consistent with the design?
Are you talking specifically about like awning improvements and things like that?
Any sorts of stylistic or design improvements that are enforced on the downtown businesses? Yeah. What is the provision, say, a small business owner that may not be able to afford that kind of an upgrade?
Some sort of a small business assistance.
I think in the past the city may have had those, but I'm less familiar, very rusty with the specifics of those. I don't know if you remember, Andrea, but it could be something that we could consider exploring. I think, as an example, that could be an excellent policy that we can develop to really put the task upon ourselves to look at different ways or strategies where we can offer those sorts of assistance to small businesses as a way to celebrate and keep and grow our small businesses. In addition, there's another area that I'm also thinking of, and that is the back of buildings where, the long-term vision is to really have these improvements to the alleys and have the backs of the buildings, be able to serve as a secondary entrance. And this will become even more important once the streetscape improvements are being made. So we have thought about that one at the back of the alley, but we could also think about putting some direction upon ourselves where we can see if we can come up and develop a program like that.
Thank you.
Great. Any more clarifying questions on land use or economic prosperity? No. Okay. All right, let's go to the second group. If we could go back to that slide, please. Thanks. The countdown slide.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thanks, Andrea.
Beginning.
So I think it's mobility and transportation. Oh. Down. Down, 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 down. Down. A little further. There we go. Thanks. Great. So the second group, mobility and transportation, parking and TDM is the second group. Any questions, clarifying questions of commissioners? Vice Chair?
Thank you. One question. You had said regarding the unbundling of parking from residential spaces for multifamily developments, and exempt from that were units, developments that were 100% affordable. I recall in some multifamily developments that we did here at the city where a small portion of them are affordable, and we didn't make them pay for the parking space. I think they got one free space, and the cost of that space was amortized out over everybody else. That policy, should the city choose to move forward with it, is still allowed under what you're saying? Or do affordable units in multifamily buildings have to pay for their parking space?
And I could clarify if.
Can you, yeah, maybe you can help me.
Yeah, publicly subsidized affordable housing using tax credits and bond financing. The definition of rent includes parking, includes a reasonable utility allowance. So for deals that are 100% affordable and subsidized, it's a different question than for what you're suggesting, which is an inclusionary unit, privately financed, just a few units in an otherwise market rate building. The parking could be unbundled in that situation. But for the 100% affordable, you know, like the Cherry Street development that's going forward, it would conflict with state rules. Maybe we can bring that back as a comment on the inclusionary side.
Affordable units in an otherwise different, you know, in a multifamily building, is it possible for the city to say those 3 affordable units get a parking space if they wanted to say that?
I'm going to actually defer in 2 ways. One, to my colleague, Brian Canepa, who's online, and also to Lisa Porras in terms of city policy on this. But Brian, do you want to take a stab at this first?
Yeah, so I'll chime in here for a second because, and thank you. I mean, the explanations are being given on the 100% affordable piece per state law. But what we're recommending at this point is that if it is a privately financed development where, you know, a portion of the units are affordable, that yes, that they would be unbundled. I don't know what the city's current policy is around that, but frankly, I mean, it's being able to unbundle parking pricing actually aids housing affordability. Yeah. Right, so that's what we're trying to encourage here.
I hear what you're saying, and I understand the. Yeah. I understand that, and I was just curious how much it boxed us in with future private developments. And it sounds like that's a decision that's sort of separate from this and down the road.
It is, and it would be a policy decision to be taken up at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. Other questions on mobility and transportation? Yeah, Commissioner Bondi.
Thank you so much, Chair Clements. With respect to the alleys, as we think about reconfiguring them to better use them for mobility, shared parking, and improving the secondary entrances, is this something that we see as a holistic city-led effort? Does this come in with redevelopment projects? Sort of how do we get that done?
It's the former. It's the holistic city-led effort, but it's an undertaking, you know, because it involves coordination with all of those business owners that face the alleys, and it's coordinating with them to contribute their parking spaces to an organized, aggregated parking area. So if you think of the 700 block, the west alley from the 700 block, it's been done successfully there in that one block, and it's very nicely organized, and everyone has sort of given up their private usage to, you know, to contribute to an overall public parking area. But yes, that would have to be an orchestrated city effort. It would have to be a discrete project that is defined for a particular block, and then it would have a whole coordination component with those business owners.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
And then I had one question with regard to mobility and transportation, and it might also belong in urban realm, but is there any opportunity to sort of strengthen the messaging, the connection to the east side? Because I think about Arroyo, that's often, like my kids' friends live on the other side of El Camino and use Arroyo to get to school. Is there some language that we could include that would kind of speak to connecting to that side of the city?
There is language, and we've been working through that. It can be strengthened. There is definitely a desire from the downtown specific plan team to have strong connections to the east side. We view the viability of both programs as contingent on one another, actually. In terms of one serving another, it's actually quite a bit. So the connection through Arroyo, the connection through Britain, whether that's walking, whether that's bicycling, all of the different ways to travel back and forth need to be reinforced and thought about together as one plan. The plans are being developed separately, but we have some language about how it connects. And also where there's challenges in that connectivity that need to be thought through. But we want to preserve that language in this plan so that it becomes, we don't lose sight of it, in other words. And it also becomes eligible for funding and other sorts of local and regional funding streams and grants and connections that will help support both and actually allow them to be enacted in the future.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions on mobility, transportation, parking, TDM? Commissioner Castaneda?
I have some on parking. Can somebody tell me if the current program that we have for employee parking provides reserved spaces for that parking?
No, it does not. It just exempts us from the time limits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering about that with the new plan to provide parking then in areas that are going to be 10-hour parking. I had just thought perhaps other people would park there besides employees and wanted to ensure there'd be enough parking for the employees.
Yeah, and if I can call upon Brian to talk about our downtown employee parking strategy that we're thinking about.
Sure, happy to chime in here. So currently the employee parking permit program is I would say relatively underutilized. There aren't many permits that are actually issued and used. And meanwhile, you have quite a few parking spaces like in the Wheeler, second floor of the Wheeler garage that go unused almost every day. And so our plan or our recommendation here initially is to say, you know, it really behooves the city to try to make better use of those empty spaces. And, you know, they're relatively inconvenient, I guess. I mean, a lot of people don't want to circulate to the second floor of a garage to get there. Mm-hmm. You know, patrons who are staying for an hour or two probably won't actively seek those out. So it will be longer term parkers who will try to find them. Ideally, it would be employees. And I think it behoove the city to kind of encourage employees to park there. And without having to pay any sort of permit fee, they would be the most likely ones to gravitate there. Now, could other people park there for several hours at a time? Yes, they could. But given the very low usage of the employee permit program as it stands today, we think that it would be very much a step in the right direction.
Okay, that's reasonable. I have one more question about parking. I was very interested in the studies that you did about parking on Laurel and the statistics on how many people parked for less than 1 hour. Were the non-restaurant merchants on Laurel Street consulted as to what needs they think their customers need for parking? Are they reporting not having enough parking spaces for their customers? I was just wondering if we'd benefit if people parked for less than an hour of having more less than 1 hour parking on Laurel, if it would benefit those merchants.
You know, from what we heard at the public forum and working with the DTAC is that there's really a wide range of needs, right, for patrons who are coming to the downtown. Sometimes they very well could be staying, you know, it might be a quick stop where you're coming in, buying something, particularly from a retail establishment and leaving, and maybe you're only staying for about 20 or 30 minutes. Conversely, you could have other people, and we generally found this, that the lengths of stay tended to be, a little bit longer than an hour, or more than an hour, definitely in many cases. What you definitely, I would discourage the city from pursuing or using too many time limits that are below 2 hours. The reason being is that when you do that, you make your system that much less efficient, and you're essentially kind of you're punishing people for trying to spend more time in your downtown. Even at a 2-hour time limit, that doesn't really give you the opportunity to be able to have dinner, walk around, maybe visit a bookstore and do something else. And so generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, I really never or don't like to recommend going below 2 hours unless you have a very compelling reason in front of a particular business. If you have like a laundromat, or you have something like a coffee shop and they're looking for very high turnover in those spaces. But generally speaking, looking at the turnover analysis that we conducted as part of the downtown study, we felt that the current 2 hour limits were by and large servicing Laurel Street pretty well.
Okay, thank you. And my last comment is on the bicycle parking that's proposed in the 700 block of Laurel. I understand short-term perhaps at the entrances, but it seems to me that's going to be pretty crowded. A lot of people are entering there. Perhaps longer-term bike parking could be provided back more by the car parking lots so it doesn't get too congested there.
So I'll let, go ahead.
It's a good comment. Brian, you could comment as well. Right now, we are getting really specific about where that bicycle parking is, and the idea is where we're showing that now on either end of the 700 block is in the tree strip opposite the little entrance plaza. So originally we had them integrated with the entrance plaza. That started to feel too crowded, so we moved them across the way into the tree strip. And the important thing we think for those is that as the usage grows, we should have the ability to grow the number of spaces also. So we want to put them in spaces that eventually could have room for expansion. Once they reach the limit of the expansion and they're really being used, beyond that, there's more demand for that, then I think it's your idea of, where's another location, out of the street corridor, maybe in the parking zones where we could start to group those. So I think that's a good comment. Brian, I don't know if you would want to add anything to that.
No, I think, Jim, you pretty much covered everything, but you definitely do with long-term bicycle parking want to be, I would say, judicious in where you put it, because it is more space intensive. But, that's obviously, as Jim said, something that's being thought through.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions. I actually had a similar question about long-term bike parking and the dismounting, I guess, and where that would occur and how it was going to not prevent pedestrians from getting around folks and kind of steering that off to the side. So it sounds like you've been thinking through that, but I also had the same reaction, which is longer term, maybe more off the beaten path, but that's more of a comment, I guess. I had a couple different questions. One, for the 700 block, that the bid package is going to go out at the end of the year. Maybe Lisa, if you could remind us, or were the funds for the improvements, or at least some of them, included in the CIP budget for next year? Usually you don't go out to bid for specific work and or improvements themselves without having that in the budget.
Yes, that's exactly right. In fact, in the budget that was just recently adopted and was shared at the study session, there is funds that have been set aside or appropriated for use should the council want to go forward with a project to implement construct. And on June 9th, the council did direct staff and the Public Works team to proceed with that. And so we're taking a portion of those funds that have been set aside to be used for the construction of Harrington Park improvements. The actual cost, so right now we have an estimate. Our team has put together a very good estimate, but we won't know the actual cost until bids are received, and then we know what is being what the deal would be. So those actual costs won't be known until later. But yes, absolutely, it is identified as in a CIP project. For some of the work, I wouldn't say for the whole thing, of course. No.
Over time.
No, over time, yes.
Thank you. I had a question about the city lots and alleys and parking, loading, service, and the layouts and the trash enclosures. Again, is this something that, because you bring up a good point, it's all disparate owners or lessors, and how do you coordinate all of that? Could this be part of a business improvement district scope of work? Is there a parking district kind of assessment for some sites? How does that typically get funded in a situation like this?
I'll start, and then I'll see if Jim or anyone else wants anything to add. The city previously had a parking assessment district. This was back in the days prior to AB 2097, where now AB 2097 says for all new development, there's no parking required. Certainly, projects are providing them, but not require. So prior to AB 2097, you all may recall we had a developer would either be providing the parking or would pay in what was referred to as parking in lieu fees. So there was a few developments whereby those parking in lieu fees were collected, but not enough, and certainly it takes time to have enough funds to be able to utilize them depending upon what type of project you want to use. So there are definitely financing strategies and a lot of different tools that we could use, and those have been identified. I believe some of them have been identified in the Streetscape Master Plan, and that is one of the things that the downtown specific plan will look at. We didn't provide any of those to you this evening, but part of the downtown specific plan will include a financing and phasing strategy, maybe not so much a phasing certainly for the public realm, but not a traditional specific plan where you're looking for catalyst projects and really to do a lot of new growth and development. So those are things that we are going to look at, and we definitely want to think about considering all the tools that we have available, but it will take some consideration and direction from our leadership to decide which tool to actually pick up. But we definitely, I think, would want to plant the seed for these possibilities in the specific plan. So I'll pause there, and
Brian might want to add.
Brian, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, in terms of, in terms of financing this sort of thing, one of our original recommendations that we had put forward as part of our work on the citywide TDM and parking study was a parking benefit district that could help finance these sorts of things. However, when we brought that to council, I forget when that was, a month or two ago, and obviously a parking benefit district oftentimes is funded largely through meter revenues. And that recommendation was rejected by council, and with it went the parking benefit district. So, that was our primary way of being able to finance it. Now, you can do it through a parking assessment district. As Lisa said, you could do it through a bid. You could put together a parking benefit district that's not based on meter revenues, but that is based on dues. That's certainly a possibility. So there are kind of different ways to cut it, I would say.
Yeah, that's helpful. So I get it. Just name some of the tools and let the policy makers.
Exactly.
make
I
the
think that
choices.
the plan will name the recommended projects, and it'll name the list of tools, but the work of matching the two, I think, is another piece of work. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And I just wanted to clarify for the commission that when metered parking or priced parking came up, we definitely heard different things. There were some council members that definitely felt it was something we don't ever want to use, and others say, well, maybe this is something that we surely don't see in the near term, but perhaps when conditions warrant, and in the long term, it may be something that the city want to consider. So, so as we think about these parking strategies, and Brian can explain this a little bit more, but we are thinking about what are the things that we can do short term versus midterm versus long term, and that's exactly how we're presenting the price parking as something way in the distant future, and we will keep it in unless we hear from the entire 5 council members that they absolutely don't want it. But right now we're just keeping it in as a potential, and it's up to future city direction if they ever want to go that route.
Right. Thank you. My other major question for parking, and this is kind of a universal thought or concern, with compliance with the MTC TOD policy being very prescriptive on the number of spaces per unit or per bedroom and per square footage. I feel like all of that is just kind of a guess at what the market will bear. And, you know, if there's sufficient demand in San Carlos for developments and products, and there are investors who agree with that, then maybe they'll go with lesser parking. And in weaker markets or sub-markets, they will say, no, that is not going to be marketable. We're going to need more parking for that. So again, I know that the planning world and the financing world, I think, have not quite met up on this in all different markets, because everything is, you know, we know San Francisco traditionally, like, yes, totally can have no parking or very, very little parking in certain places in the city, and lots of financing options traditionally. But how did you all do some kind of feasibility analysis about these parking ratios, or get developer feedback on whether this is marketable, especially in the current climate in which so much of housing is financially not feasible at the moment, given costs and rates? So can you talk a little bit about how you thought about financial feasibility for those parking ratios?
Yeah.
And also, and I'll just add on, and also the idea that after you hit the cap for the district, that the future deals there would have no parking obligations, even away, more than half a mile from transit. Sorry, go ahead.
Sure. Here, I'll jump in here. So your concerns are very well founded. Anytime you're dealing with parking maximums, particularly in the world of trying to meet RHNA numbers and housing allocations, you don't want this sort of thing to impede other city goals. And so what we did was we worked with the city and gathered essentially, literally, every single development that had been approved or entitled since 2019 to get an accurate view of exactly how much parking was approved with the project. And what we found was that the projects obviously vary a bit, and I have the data literally looking right in front of me, varied from anywhere from about 0.35 spaces per bedroom to as high as 0.9, with the average being 0.73. So our range, we felt, of having 0.7 in tier 1, going up to 0.8 for tier 2, will still cover the almost, I think, all but 2 of the developments that would have been built. Now, is that perfect? No, because you do have some developers, for example, who might want to build, like I said, there was a couple developments that built 0.9 spaces per bedroom, and they would have to make an executive decision at that point about whether or not it's financially feasible or not. We could continue to play with the ratios a bit, but at the end of the day, the cap is what the cap is, if you want to comply with the MTC policy. As a side note, we're working with MTC right now to help them kind of further flush out parts of the TOC policy related to parking.
Yeah. Good.
And to try to determine kind of what flexibility exists in there. So one of the things, and I apologize if I glossed over this, but that we're recommending that the city pursue is that the cap include all parking spaces, whether they be residential, non-residential, or hotel, and grouping them together as one big sum to provide better flexibility between the needs of residential and non-residential. Your non-residential is really not, I would say, quote, the problem. We looked at all the different developments that have been built since 2019, and you're averaging just over 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So, whereas the MTC maximum allows up to 2.5. So in reality, and frankly, in downtown, you would have a lot of developments come in that provide no parking. You have a retail, you have a restaurant, very likely they're not going to provide anything.
Right.
Even small office might not. So, yeah, we're trying to provide this little balancing act, and that's why we provided more, a higher maximum for residential. Because right now, if you look at what the requirement would be, if you associate essentially 1 space per unit, that would equal 0.6 spaces per bedroom. And we actually made it higher than that. We made it 0.7 to 0.8 to give a little bit more wiggle room on the residential side.
When you said the range was 0.35 to 0.9 per bedroom, what was that universe on the residential side?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Was it recent developments, last 5 years, last 10 years? What was the universe that you studied on that?
Oh, I see. So these are from 2019 to, Lisa can correct me if it were you pulled data, but I think it was to the end of 2024. And it was 14 different developments. I think all, but maybe one of them was either in or immediately adjacent to the downtown.
Right. Okay. And it was constructed in 2019 to 2024? Lisa, do you remember? Not entitled, but constructed?
I believe they were constructed, but we can get that information for you.
Curious.
No, but I think it's good to have, so we can transmit that back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But I'm pretty sure it was constructed.
Yeah, thank you for the additional information. I know the last thing that we want to do is go through all this planning and great thought, and then, be very specific because MTC told us to be at this moment in time. And then, maybe we tweak it later or they tweak it later, but just don't want to impede any development that would be coming to us. Okay, those were my questions. Thank you for that. Let's have one last set of questions on 5, 6, 7, and 8, public realm, public art,
Chair Clemens,
sustainability.
I had a question in the previous section.
Oh, I'm sorry, please.
Actually, I have two. The first one would be, and I'd mentioned this in one of the past meetings, with the parking permits, I saw that there are provisions for homes that don't have garages or driveways, but has any consideration been given to households which may not be able to afford a $50 or a $75 a month parking fee?
Oh, sorry, I'll be the voice again chiming in. Yes, it actually is in the downtown parking plan. That's that appendix to the specific plan. We're recommending that a provision be included for equity purposes for low-income households. But we don't make it necessarily a specific recommendation on pricing because we're not giving a specific recommendation on, frankly, the permit pricing at this point.
Thank you. And my other question is based off the wheel-free 700 block. Can you explain what wheel-free means? Does it just mean no bikes? Because then there are electric scooters, and then we're talking wheelchairs, and we're talking strollers. So what is that and what it isn't?
It's not strollers, but it's scooters, skateboards, bikes. You want to park your bike, walk your scooter, carry your skateboard. So we don't want people riding those wheeled, personal mobility things in the 700 block.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So as long as those signs can be, that signage and messaging can be clear on the block, that will be very helpful. Thank you. That's all I had to ask.
I'm so sorry, Commissioner Anand. I apologize. Maybe, I don't know if you have questions and want to kick us off in the last 5, 6, 7, and 8, public realm, public art, sustainability and resiliency, and infrastructure.
No
or we can come back to
questions.
you. Okay.
No questions.
Great.
Thank you.
Who would like to inquire? Any clarifications? No? Okay. I don't think I had clarifications either. Okay, so now let's open it up to see if we have any public comments. Again, the commissioners ask clarifying questions. We'll go back to see if they're members of the public who would like to weigh in and comment on any of these areas of what was presented. Lynette, do we have any hands raised online?
There are no hands raised at the moment.
Okay. And we can wait another few seconds to see if anyone would like to raise their hands. Is there a slide? Thank you. Exactly. Exactly. If you'd like to join the Zoom meeting, the meeting number is here, 886-3546-7439. Or you can call in, dial 669-900-9128, and then raise your hand virtually. Lynette, are there any raised hands on Zoom?
There are none.
Okay. I think with that, someone like to make a motion to close public comment?
Motion to close public comment.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Just clarifying, Andrea, do we need the public comment closing on, because it's a study session, is it different?
Unofficially, but
Okay.
yeah.
Let's not vote then. Let's just conclude. And then go back to, thank you. See, what are we going to do without you, Vice Chair? Let's go back to discussion then and take them in the same, well, you know what? Let's just get done. Let's just make comments on anything you would like. Commissioner Bundy looks ready to start.
Oh, I just thought you were going to call on me first. Alrighty, thank you so much for all this hard work. It's really great to see it evolve. Regarding land use and zoning, I'm supportive of the rezoning of the Samtrans parcel. It'll add another 20 units to our housing stock, which is greatly needed. And I really appreciate the application of the scale ratio and how you depicted it for us. That really helps to make it tangible as to what that change will mean for us as we're walking down the streets. With regard to mobility and transportation, I really appreciate the idea of the Holly swing lanes. We didn't get to dig into that much before. I actually use Holly that way because I do not like making the right turn off of El Camino onto Holly because that gets really messy. So I think it is kind of operating that way already, but would be really interested to see that be further leveraged as things shift. And it was very nice to see the more detailed example of the bus stop guidance. That came up last time, but actually seeing the schematic is very helpful. With regard to M8, which is ADA compliance, I would like to see the language strengthened. Right now we just say we'll provide ADA compliant infrastructure, but I think it could be strengthened to talk about connections to and through the downtown core instead of just infrastructure. The parking and TDM, that tracks with what we've seen before, and it's really helpful to see the standards language. That really helps to unpack some of the policies that are put forth. And then stormwater, because I can't help myself. Right now there's not really strong mentions about stormwater from a flood perspective. It's really the rain gardens, which are probably designed to, 25-year storm if we're lucky, but probably much smaller storms than that. So I'd like to see some language about planning and designing the rain gardens, stormwater catchments, and buried stormwater systems, considering more frequent and extreme storms anticipated with climate change. So I think we're going to need some bigger pipes than we have today, since we're losing the curb storage in a storm. And then I also thought we could more strongly emphasize the role of these design concepts in mitigating urban heat islands. It's packed a little bit into PR9, but I think, talking about the role of trees and respite in mitigating those climate impacts could help rack it in more to the resilience part of the framework. So that's what I've got. Thank you very much for your hard work, and I appreciate the opportunity to chime in.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Castaneda?
Thank you for this very good presentation. I agree with the rezoning of the Samtrans building to allow the height increase. There is zoning like that nearby, and I think actually if there's a perfect place downtown to put such a tall building, I think that's probably it. I agree with the step backs on the San Carlos to achieve the 1-to-2 ratio. I think that's a really nice decision. I think I'm okay with the increase to the 14 feet as long as it's at 14 to 16 feet height for the storefronts, as long as it is limited to that area on San Carlos and Laurel. I wouldn't want to see that limitation on El Camino. I like the 4-story step back on Laurel. Again, I think it's more flexible so that we can get some more housing, and then we will get the 1-to-2 ratio again. I think that's good. On the awnings, I think that's kind of complicated, some of those awning designs, but I'm glad to see that you're also going to allow umbrellas. And I hope that those awnings, you mentioned that they had to be retractable. I'm a little confused on how that's going to work with these panels that come down, but I'm assuming they're going to retract into the building face so that we're not going to have these poles sticking out. I'm pleased that we're going to have objective design standards that are going to be applied downtown. Have I got anything else? Again, I agree with my fellow commissioner here on seeing those nice drawings that explained where the bus stops were going to be on San Carlos Avenue. I think that's going to work. I was worried about that. And overall, I just think it's a great plan, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of comments. Again, excellent presentations. I'll add my voice to my colleagues and support the rezoning of the property at Samtrans. I think that's a good idea. For Laurel Street, I support the step back from the 3rd floor to the 4th level. The street is narrow, but because it's all one level, I think that is a concept that works and is a good idea. I support being less restrictive on general personal services and what is allowed on the ground floor, expanding that a little bit. Caltrain is electric, and I support the strong link between the nice Caltrain station and Laurel Street, and I think the work that is being done on San Carlos Avenue goes a long way towards achieving that. I like the idea from onto parking of making business parking publicly accessible during non-business hours. We've been talking for a long time as a city about shared parking, right-sizing parking, and a policy like this really helps make something like that a reality. Onto the alleys. I've said this before, I think we need to bubble up to the top the work in the alleys, because I think it will ultimately facilitate what's going to happen on Laurel Street. And again, considering prioritizing what we do on the 700 block in the alley might help create that gateway to Laurel Street that we want. And it may help get employees there to realize that there is parking in Wheeler Plaza, because during that construction they will have to relocate for a little while. And it also affords parking, I think, for food delivery services like DoorDash, who can then go into the rear entrance, as you say, which will now be available to get dinners and then quickly leave and deliver them. I like the idea of the green development. We've done some lead designs on the east side commercially, and it's nice to see that policy translated into something with the downtown. I like the idea of incorporating water-saving technologies into new developments. We've done this a little bit commercially on the east side, and it's nice to see that policy come to downtown. I think we'll be happy that we did that, especially during drought years. I like the idea of what Commissioner Bundy said about reducing the heat island effect with green roofs and trees. It makes for a pretty visual to look at the trees, but it also has a climate resiliency aspect to it, and I appreciate that she raised that. I think overall this is a very good plan, and I want to again thank everyone for all their hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Anand?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this great presentation. Also, great appreciation for the Downtown Advisory Committee and members of the public who've been so active in participating in this through the years. Our San Carlos downtown, the one thing that I like about our San Carlos downtown is like it's just the right size. It's not too spread out. It's just enough. It has all varieties of business. It has chains. It has small businesses. So as long as the plan is inclusive and takes everybody with it, rather than pushing a few out of it, I think this is what I would call success. The other thing that I would mention and emphasize is that since this is a very long-term plan and the world is changing faster than we know, for all you know, we might be having self-driving taxis in the next 5 years and parking may not be required. Who knows how things are going to go. So as long as we can keep the plan as a breathing document, it stays up to date with the technology, even in terms of climate-friendly measures. There might be new techniques, new technologies to be more climate friendly. As long as we can keep iterating and stay up to date, I think it will not only be progressive, it will also help us reduce costs and create a better infrastructure which is more contemporary and makes sense for the current age. Those will be my comments. Overall, great presentation. I completely agree with my fellow commissioners here, and I'm so excited to see this vision come to fruition.
Thank you. I also was, continue to be really impressed at only 3 years of hard work will get you. This has been a really long process till now with a lot of really good input in the community, and kudos to city staff for facilitating that and to our consultant partners. So I just really, really like the vision that this paints about vibrant, safe, inclusive, distinctive, attractive, environmentally friendly, considering equity. I just think the vision is right on, and I love that. I encourage you to, I supported several things about this, about trying to remove restrictions that could deter developers around the Samtrans site and then around the setbacks. I support the changes. It sounds like you've really thought that through. I also really appreciated the explanation of how wide the street is and how tall the building should be. It is something that I think most people who live here have opinions on, where they're like, oh, well, this is too narrow to be high, or that's too wide, it's wide enough to be high. And that I knew that there was rule of thumb behind that. And so I really appreciate now even having the name for it, because it is a science somewhat, not just people's opinions driving that. So thank you for that. Uses for the downtown core, I also support the removal of auto sales and leasing in the core because of the bigger footprint. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then being less restrictive on the general personal services. Those made a lot of sense to me. I agree with Commissioner Anand. I am very supportive of, as we go forward towards implementation, to really think through small business facade improvements as part of what we need to fund. And that would include, out front and dining, but also alleyway improvements, so for other kinds of businesses too. I think we've talked about this before. There are businesses that have invested a lot in what they have created now. And as we change over time, it's going to take a while. But I do think we don't want to lean too heavily financially on them if they can't afford it. We really want to keep smaller businesses, especially those that don't charge luxury prices of all kinds of business types, to stay here, be here. And I think that's one way that we could try to do that. In the old days, that was called redevelopment funding. Just want to say that. We used to have all kinds of facade improvement programs funded by state redevelopment. I do agree that shared parking is so important for a small footprint downtown like we have. So I'm really happy to hear this being discussed and moving forward. Back to the parking ratios, I know the proposal is Tier 1 by right with 0.7 spaces per bedroom for residential. I would suggest that we consider, as I hear that, was it Brian, still working with MTC on the TOC policy, if what they do is go in a slightly different direction or they tweak it, maybe we have the plan that says 0.7 spaces per bedroom or whatever that program would allow if they get more generous, to give us a little bit more wiggle room if things change a bit. I think this focus on parking, flexible use of the curb space for vehicle parking, for time-limited parking, for loading, for pickups, for drop-offs. I think we've all called those out as all really important for the different kinds of access of residents to the downtown businesses. And again, what Commissioner Anand said really resonates with me. One of the nice things about our community is that we've got all the amenities basically that you would want, and you don't have to circle for 15 minutes to find a parking space to get to them. And so I do think I'm really thinking carefully about how that parking usage moves and what we need to do long-term to make sure that's still the case, really makes it a livable community. The city lots and the alleyways, I think that is really important. And as we think about implementation, it seems to make sense. Maybe that is kind of on the earlier side to do that improvement back there so that it is functioning by the time other improvements maybe come forward. So to kind of sequence that on the earlier side seems to make sense to me. And then I concur, the employee parking permit, I've always wondered about those spaces that are always empty when I go to park in the Wheeler garage, that it must be a good program for someone, but that folks were not using it enough, and that those are really valuable assets. So I support us kind of looking at this program again and redoing that and reconsidering that. So, and then finally, the D-tax addition of considering green building. It's not too hard, but at least it states our values that we want everything to be as sustainable as possible if they can. And so I felt like it was striking the right note to consider all of these elements and focus on sustainability. So those are my comments. I think this has been a wonderful plan. Yes.
A quick comment.
Please.
So your comments, yours on the parking improvements phase coming earlier, that is something that we looked at when we were looking at all the different phasing scenarios of moving at least one of those areas pretty early on in the phasing sequence. I think the 600 block east alley zone we had coming in before the 600 block improvements. So, I think all of that phasing needs to be discussed and strategized, and it's going to all change by the time you get through 12 phases. But I think we can take these comments back and sort of strengthen the idea that those are sort of pushed earlier in the phasing. So
that seems to make sense. Yeah. Yeah, please, Commissioner Castaneda.
I do have one more comment, because I think that you had talked about strategies for enforcement of parking. And there were questions on how that would be done, and I just wanted to say that my preference would be to augment the parking enforcement through the sheriff's office. That would be my preference. I don't know if any of the others of you had preferences. There were suggestions for various methods.
Thank you. Any last thoughts someone wanted to share? There's so much good work in this plan, and I really appreciate all of this work and all of the thought and all of the people who have given input to this over 3 years. So thank you very much for bringing this. Lisa, did you get everything that we need to bring forward to council? Okay.
Yes, and thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we're on to item number 9 on the agenda, reports, correspondence, and general information. Item A, report on the recent city council actions. Andrea.
Thank you. So the council recently appointed the 2 new planning commissioners, Jorge Tapia and Frank Kaniasti, I believe is how you pronounce the name. We'll get it right before the first meeting, which will be August 4th for both commissioners. The council also adopted the budget formally and approved the staff moving forward with construction documents for the downtown Phase 1A. Oops.
Great, thank you. We look forward to meeting the new commissioners. Item B, Planning and Transportation Commission comments or reports. Any comments? Yes.
I just wanted to say farewell and thank you so much to our outgoing commissioners, Castaneda and Commissioner Garvey. And I personally learned so much from both of you. You've been such a role model for me as a new commissioner, and thank you so much for helping me settle in the new role, and thank you for leading the light for the next to come. Thank you so much for all your contributions.
I wanted to add to that what I just want to say, professionals of your caliber donating so much of your time to our small city. Really, really appreciate all that you brought, all of the professional experience and acumen to these tasks. So thank you. And also wanted to thank you for all of the extra time over and above Planning Commission that Vice Chair Garvey gave to the Residential Design Review Committee. Which was, as we said earlier, very time-consuming and a lot of work. And then Commissioner Castaneda's service on the Centennial Commission. It's a commission committee. Really appreciate that. I think the Centennial celebrations have gone off really, really well. And I have my pin on my purse and wear it everywhere. So thank you for your additional work on behalf of the commission. We really appreciate it. Yeah, we're going to miss you. So. Thank you. Item C, any correspondence to report?
No correspondence.
Thanks. And item D, planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects.
So no meetings in July. As you'll remember, we voted to cancel those. So the first meeting will be August 4th. We are still figuring out the agenda for that, but we will have the item that was continued from this evening, definitely. And then wanted to also thank Commissioners Castaneda and Garvey. I wrote down some points because I wanted to do a proper thank you. The breadth of projects that you both have worked on is pretty incredible. So I know I'm leaving out about 95% of them as I talk, but I did include some pictures so we can look at the residential. This is, again, not everything. Commissioner Castaneda, it's my pleasure to recognize you for your outstanding service on the Planning and Transportation Commission. Throughout your time on the commission, you were attending over 45 meetings, and you brought a clear commitment to the well-being of San Carlos. Commissioner Castaneda contributed to the review and recommendation of numerous residential and mixed-use developments, ensuring that design, livability, and neighborhood compatibility were always part of the conversation. She helped shape policy decisions on everything from zoning and land use amendments to design and objective standards and guidelines, and provided meaningful input on our general plan update, downtown specific plan, North Area specific plan, and TDM updates. Commissioner Castaneda also played a critical role in evaluating major commercial and housing projects. Commissioner Castaneda also participated in joint meetings with other city commissions, as well as the Centennial Committee, and trainings with regional counterparts, including special sessions focused on large-scale planning efforts and environmental review. Your voice has helped guide some of the most important planning conversations in our city. Thank you for your time, your thoughtfulness, and your dedication to making San Carlos a better place for all of us. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and for Commissioner Garvey, I'm going to do commercial, even though you both contributed to both. I wanted to take a moment to also thank Commissioner Garvey, Vice Chair Garvey. Commissioner Garvey started on the PTC in July of 2019, so 6 years now, and has served as both chair and vice chair, and has attended over 90 meetings of the Planning and Transportation Commission during that time. I know. Ellen has served with distinction on both the Residential Design Review Committee and the Planning Commission, bringing thoughtfulness, professionalism, and a deep commitment to the well-being of our community. Her perspective was always what is best for the community and has helped shape decisions that affect our neighborhoods, our city's character, and the everyday lives of our residents. You tackled complex land use issues with fairness, clarity, and integrity. On the Planning Commission, Commissioner Garvey made countless decisions that have influenced our community, including several life science and office approvals, over 300 housing units, and not to mention Commissioner Garvey's influence and thought in all of our long-range planning efforts, such as the housing element, downtown plan, East Side Vision Plan, to name a few. Commissioner Garvey's experience with sustainability in her professional life has been an invaluable resource to the Commission staff and the community as a whole. On the RDRC as chair, Ellen brought an eye for design and a respect for community values, helping to guide residential projects in a way that balanced innovation with neighborhood compatibility. These were perhaps some of the most difficult meetings to chair, as Ellen had to manage the input and expectations of both property owners and neighbors. She led over 40 RDRC meetings, staying on as chair to ensure continuity. Commissioner Garvey, your contributions have helped ensure that San Carlos grows with purpose and care. Your service reflects the very best of civic engagement, and we are truly grateful for the time, energy, and wisdom you've shared with us. Thank you both very much.
Okay. Please, if you'd like to say a word.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Chair. I want to publicly thank the City Council for appointing me to the Commission and to the Residential Design Review Committee. I have enjoyed all of the meetings. The city is doing so many exciting things, and I've been so pleased and honored to have been a part of it for the last 6 years. Andrea, Lisa Porres, all the staff, thank you very much. I could not have done it without all of the preparation and the packets and the materials and your responses to requests for information. Thank you very, very much. I'll miss all of that. Chair Clemens, thank you very much for your leadership this past year, and to all of my colleagues. I'm going to miss everybody. My very first project on my very first Planning Commission meeting was the development that is now right behind Bianchini. So that was the very first night that I came to the commission. Yeah, it was very special. Every time I walk by that, I like that development. Anyways, thank you all very much. I will miss you.
Mr. Castaneda.
And I also want to thank the City Council for appointing me, and I want to thank my fellow commissioners, and particularly the guidance of the chair and the vice chair, who I've really enjoyed serving with. And I think with our new commissioners here, the commission's going to be in really great hands. And the staff. I was saying earlier this evening that I cannot imagine that another city has anybody better than the staff that we have. And I appreciate so much all the help that you gave us all of the time that I've been here. So thank you very much.
Such a pleasure to serve with both of you and with all of us together. We really appreciate all the work and the support. And thanks. And we are adjourned.